Good evening, everybody. It's we're now 4 minutes after 7 p.m. It is June 25th, 2018. This is Owen Sound City Council. We have been in a closed session. We're now moving into the open session. I have a report coming out of the closed session. We had a closed session meeting this evening beginning at 6:30. Council reviewed the minutes of closed session meeting held on May 28th, 2018, and Council reviewed one matter regarding a potential disposition of land on 23rd Street East and provided direction to staff. So, Council, additional business. Anyone? Councillor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to give an update from the last Young Professionals Network event that happened on Thursday.
Good, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, my body. I have one item, and it pertains to the 2nd Avenue protest, which seems to be ongoing.
Thank you. Councillor Kepke?
Thank you, Your Worship. One item regarding the Bruce Gray Music Hall of Fame and one regarding Harrison Park. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor O'Leary? Seeing none. This way. Councillor Thomas?
Yes, Your Worship, I have one item on the Tom campfire this week.
Good. And you're good. Go ahead.
I just have one item on the graduation of the cadets.
Okay. And I'll have a couple of matters to report of what I've done the last week. So, disclosure pecuniary, staff. I usually do them first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Just an item about Canada Day coming up on Sunday.
Good, thanks. Anyone else down there? No, okay, sorry. Disclosure pecuniary interest. Anyone else? Okay, I have, do I just read the notice or just advise? I have a pecuniary interest with regard to 12G in the agenda, which is a staff report on a hangar lease, as well as 21D, which is the bylaw related to that hangar lease. This involves a client of my law firm, so I'll leave the room for one of those and will not be voting on the other. Number 6, confirmation of council minutes.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 11th, 2018 as printed be adopted.
Any discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thanks. 6B.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kepke, that the minutes of the special council meeting held on June 19th, 2018 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. 6C.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that the minutes from the council session, closed session meeting held on May 28th, 2018 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Number 7, motion to move into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kepke, that City Council now move into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
All in favor? That is carried, so we are now in committee of the whole. Just before we go too much further, I received a phone call from Councillor McManaman. He is on his way, but has had a horrendous day at work and will be here. I may want to juggle the agenda a little bit to make sure that he's here when we get to some of the discussion. At number 8, we have no public meetings. At number 9, this is going to be a fun evening. We've got 3 deputations. So I'm going to go down to the other microphone for the first one. I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor Wright to join me and help. Nothing. Welcome all guests, family and friends to the 2018 Senior of the Year presentation. June is Seniors Month in the province of Ontario, and it is a time to recognize the importance and valuable role that seniors play in our community. I see it as a time when at I see it all the time when I'm at various community events and engagements. Tonight, we're lucky to honor one of our very own citizens as we recognize our city's 2018 Senior of the Year. Deputy Mayor Wright has joined me on behalf of Councillor McManaman, who is the chair of the Community Services Committee, to assist, and Mr. Walker, sorry, if you want to come up. Our MPP, Bill Walker, is here. I also bring greetings on behalf of Larry Miller, who is unable to attend tonight, and he has sent a certificate to be presented as well. So, Marie, if you want to come up. City of Owen Sound Council and staff is pleased to welcome and would like to congratulate Ms. Marie Mills on being named Owen Sound's 2018 Senior of the Year. Marie has made a name for herself as an active member of lawn bowling community. She has served 2 terms as president of the Rose Lawn Lawn Bowling Club, one from 2005 to 2007, and the other one from 2015 to 2017. As past president, Marie has provided valuable experience in the day-to-day operations of the club, keeping the ball rolling in the right direction. Little pun. Marie has been instrumental in the club's board meetings, tournaments, and a key fundraising member, applying for and receiving over $20,000 in grants to help with the operation of her local Rose Lawn Bowling Club. When Marie is not at Rose Lawn Bowling Club or acting on their behalf, she has spent her time assisting at Central West Side United Church as Sunday school teacher, arranging social functions and delivering lunches. Believe it or not, when she isn't involved with the Rose Lawn Bowling Club, volunteering for the church, she donates her time to the Grey Bruce Health Services, where she volunteers every Tuesday morning. Ms. Mills was nominated by her peers for Rose Lawn Bowling Club, and it's quite clear that Marie is respected and loved, not only by her friends at the bowling club, but by countless others, and we've seen many people out tonight to support you, family, and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of council, please join Deputy Mayor Wright and myself and Mr. Walker to congratulate Marie Mills. You can. Probably they're going to want to take her picture. Look at. When's the last time you had your picture taken this many times? I'll give you back that just for now.
Very
And the
nice.
senior plaque. Also, switch again. This is the certificate from Larry Miller,
Oh, yeah.
our
Thank
MP. Put that back in the pile, and Bill's here.
We have a couple, so we have a little note, a little
Thank you
scroll.
very much.
And a little pin to commemorate all that you do for the community, so thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
So if you wish to say a few words, you
Guess
you
so.
may.
I want to thank to the Community Service Committee for recommending me to council. Thank you to Mayor and council for selecting me. Of course, there's thanks to the Rose Lawn Bowling Club for nominating me, and thank you to everyone that has come out to support me today. I might also mention that we moved here about 60 years ago, and we were introduced to lawn bowling, and that was at St. George's Lawn Bowling Club, which was behind St. George's Church. It is a great sport for all ages. Rose Lawn welcomes everyone to come out and try the sport. I have enjoyed giving back to the community by volunteering for a number of organizations. I consider this award a huge honor, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And as you can see from the positive impact you've had, and interesting, you know, this was an award for you, and you used your opportunity to promote your club. So congratulations, thank you for all you've done and continue to do. Thank you. What's next? Still on. Now, next I'm at 9B in the agenda, and we welcome Lieutenant Colonel James LaRue, Commanding Officer of the 4th Canadian Division Training Center in Meaford. Welcome. I'll get you to push the little button. I just shut it off on the microphone, and the red light will come on. There, perfect. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, it's labeled, this is infantry proof. I appreciate that, thank you. So I just want to thank the town council for providing us the opportunity, both myself and Chief Warrant Officer Mayfield. We appreciate every chance we have to interact with the community, because I've only lived here for 12 months, but I do have to say that this is quite possibly the best support I've actually ever seen. So I've moved around quite a few bases, a lot of time in Alberta, some time in Yellowknife, and I'm blown away by the stellar support. So this is one opportunity here to come and at least say thanks personally, and also hopefully demystify what happens on the base a bit for people that aren't familiar with it. The other goal here is to shamelessly promote our open house coming up. I saw the signs up in the lobby, and that's a great indicator there that the word is getting out, and I just want to talk about what we do, but also promote that activity coming up in a few weeks. So what we do at the base. So basically, from an Army perspective, is we conduct training, so critical soldier training and leader training, labeled individual training for the division. And I'll talk about what that means from an Army perspective, and also run the base. So where, we are quite possibly the best training area in this part of Ontario. There is Borden as well, which is a little bit bigger, but it's also busier. And then the next biggest training area is out in Petawawa by Pembroke. So we have a pretty big mandate considering who we actually train, which is essentially southern and southwestern Ontario. So for those that aren't familiar with the Army, you essentially have five divisions. One of them encompasses Western Canada. Our parent division, the 4th Canadian Division, is essentially Ontario, less the little gray corner off into to the west, and that is just due to logistics. That actually belongs to the Western Division. You do have the 2nd Division, or basically Quebec, and then you have the Atlantic Division there under 5 Division, and the red one is actually, it's a small organization that deploys where and when needed, and that's the 1st Division. But for us, we are responsible for the training for the bulk of Ontario, and that's quite a huge mandate, as we'll talk about here. Okay, so every great military presentation has an org chart. The key takeaways here, and the next slide clarifies it, is when you talk about span of control and what myself and the RSM are responsible for, is you see a number of subunits. We do have an operations cell, an orderly room to deal with the administration, but then we also have a number of what we call companies, regular strength, about 40 people, and they're responsible for doing various trainings. I'm not going to get into all of the abbreviations and acronyms, because otherwise I will definitely blow my 10-minute timeline. But the key here is we have, in red, we have 2 organizations, and they just do training out in Petawawa. We have 2 companies, so Bravo and Charlie, that do the training here. The base over doubles, but we add 2 more companies highlighted in yellow to do training here, like in Meaford and in the local area, in the summertime, and that is definitely a key. There's a number of what we call larger units, and a lot of them are responsible for morale and welfare. The Military Family Resource Center, looking after the families and programming. Integrated Personal Support Center, they deal with transition for people going from uniform into the civilian community, and some of those can be complex medical cases, so we have people that deal with just how to help with that transition. We have personal support programs that involves all our fitness staff and morale and welfare. Health services is our clinic, so we don't have a hospital in the base, we have a small clinic, and the few people in that clinic do yeoman's work. When you look at the training, Army training is inherently risky, and people do get hurt, sprained ankles, broken arms, poison ivy is another prominent one here, and they get to deal with all that. Military police, and then what we call real property, and that is the people that maintain and the custodians of our buildings. So So when you talk about span of control, so what the Chief Warrant Officer Mayfield and I am responsible for, we have people as well all over Ontario permanently based that fall under us. And it is a joy and a privilege maintaining command and control over something of that size. Everybody knows the province is huge, and we routinely have to go and visit these people. So it takes away from our job of training here, unfortunately, but we have a lot of great people that do that and maintain that command and control on our behalf. Okay, so what is the base? Well, it's 75 square kilometers of ranges and facilities. So I will not discuss what all the black boxes talk about. It's just ranges allow us to do training, from throwing grenades to doing urban operations, so replicating, going in and clearing a building out of bad people, and then a host of other different sites. Mortar training. The red blob in the middle is where one of the things that we do a lot of in Meaford is artillery firing, so indirect fire, and all the rounds go into that red area. So we have a lot of ranges. We offer a lot of opportunity for military units that want to train and law enforcement agencies, and we're all crammed into tiny 75 square kilometers, which means that like right now, when we are busy, there is no spare space. So when you ask, who do we train? Well, we train the regular force and the reserve force. When we talk about regular force, we do what is Development Period 1 infantry training, and those are young men and women that have joined the Army and they want to join the infantry, and the bulk of them will end up in 2 Brigade in Petawawa and then deploying overseas. So we get private soldiers trained up to meet the minimum standards so that they can go and carry on operations overseas. We do junior leadership training, so those are what you could call the middle management. So corporals that so the next rank above private is corporal, and the junior leadership being the master corporals, so that is the first line of leadership in the military organization. We do basic, so what I call entry-level training, and that is just getting people to understand how to do drill and the rank structure. And then we also do specialty courses, unarmed combat, basic mountain operations, and other key training that soldiers need to carry on overseas or anywhere that we get sent. And then we have the reserve force as well. So, in there we have the regional summer training, which is ongoing right now. It starts in April and it goes till August. And that's where you see the size of the base more than double. Steady state up on the base, we're around 180, not more than 180 uniformed people. We have 180 civilian support people, but in the summer, like right now, we were growing upwards of 500 and even more after Canada Day for people doing training. And those are all reserve force people. They could be students, whether it's post-secondary, and then also anybody else that has dedicated, on top of their career, their life to also supporting the military. And as you see there, 675 staff and 750 plus students is what we get to during the peak period. And then weekend individual and unit training, because it's not just the summer. We do see the fall and the spring, a lot of those units from the reserve force, all of Southern Ontario, whether they're from Toronto or London, is the two big points. Them all coming up in training just because of the benefits of the training area and the region. So when we look at our calendar here, because a lot of this I'm not going to get into explaining the courses, the key here is there is the only time where there is not a course going on is the last 2 weeks of December and the first week of January. Otherwise, we will normally have, on average, 5 to 6 courses. And if you ask me, so what does 5 to 6 courses mean? Well, each course is probably, we try to maximize about 40 people, plus 10 support staff per course. The numbers add up, and we swell and almost burst at the seams. The other key here is, because it doesn't fit on one, is our summer training, I've said, is from April to August, which doesn't look too bad there, but when you go to the next slide, plus all of this. And that's why we get upwards, as I said, we're about 500 and we're swelling to way more than that after the Canada Day weekend. So while a lot of people are enjoying the benefits of the area in summer, we actually, we get really busy. And this is where we actually really earn our paycheck, I'll say. So if we look at it in a nutshell, okay, so for 1 degree of courses, so national, those are controlled nationally and they're manned or staffed nationally. 4 to 3 courses a year of 810 qualifications, plus the summertime of 47 courses where there's almost 1,100 qualifications, and then what we call primary combat function, that would be unarmed combat. It's more or less, I know it sounds really high speed, but it's actually just routine stuff that we need, getting basic qualifications. But 47 on top of that, another 1,400 qualifications. We are by far the busiest training center in all of Canada. This is, I can confidently say that because I've worked in the one out west, and we do more training here because of the benefits of the training area and the local area. The other thing the base does, we also, because we are a base, we are open to other people that want to use our areas. So civilian police agencies, I've seen a lot of police forces from Southern Ontario, whether its specialty is in SWAT, but also regional police, just because we have the infrastructure on the ranges to house, and they can get on here. So we offer that as well. So pre-deployment training for people going overseas, private sector agencies. Bruce Power is an example that has come and done some training on the base because of what we offer. Foreign military training, that hasn't been as prominent in the last year, but I know the Jamaican Defence Force used to come up here every other year. We haven't seen them in a couple of years, but that is one opportunity. Coast Guard, Naval Reserve, Special Forces Command. Actually, for some people may have seen some military aircraft last week at the Billy Bishop Airport, and that was actually Special Forces Command doing some of their specialty training, and they absolutely love it here because they can do the training. They're fully supported not only by the base but by the local area, and I suspect we'll see more of that in the future. And then defense research, so contractors, vehicle development, we see it all in Meaford. As I mentioned, we have 180 support people. They're not the only people. We have our uniforms, but you'll also see Canadian base operators as well, and they provide a lot of support to the base. It's another, these are all civilian people in our community that ensure that the base runs, and they do an incredible amount of work for us, so that way, us in uniform, we don't have to worry about mowing the lawn. We can focus on training, and they take care of all of that by an extended contract with the military. So challenges, if I was to say the 2 big challenges here, and I think this is common to everybody, house prices, local economy and affordability, I'll say. As the prices go up, it becomes increasingly harder for young soldiers to afford, especially family members. Everybody knows you try to buy I went through a period of shock last April when I had to buy a house here. Realizing what it was like compared to out west. But that is a challenge, just like anybody else that wants to move to this area. How do you attract people and ensure that they can survive? It's no different than the military. It's something we struggle with. And then I've thrown in increased capacity and reducing spillover, and that comes down to discipline. So we have our own military discipline and justice system. We bring in a lot of people, and we're very cognizant that sometimes those people leave the base and they may or may not get into trouble. So we have a very good relationship with local police forces, and I hope it keeps extending with the communities. And we understand we're pretty easy to spot out in the crowd, even if we're not in uniform. We usually stick out like sore thumbs, and we do our best to ensure that discipline and any issues do not spill over to the local community. But if it does, we deal with it swiftly, and I don't want to say harshly, but I'll say appropriately, to ensure that we don't damage the strong bonds that we have. So finally, the shameless plug. So we have an open house coming up on the 7th of July, and we really want to get the message out, because this is a chance for anybody who wants to come out, see what we do, and interact with the soldiers on the base. So we are going to have what I would call static display. We have a tank coming up people can get in and see. You can actually get in and touch one of the artillery pieces. We'll offer the training area tour, so anybody that would like to see, because there is a lot of history on the base and in the training area. So that's going to be going on. There'll be some demonstrations from unarmed combat, as well as you can see we're going to replicate some of the operations that we would do overseas. But yeah, basically from 9:30 till it closes off at 5 o'clock. We welcome everybody. There is no admission. It's free, and we just want to encourage everybody to get out and interact, because this is our way to give back to the local community, and again, demystify who we are, because we're not just uniforms, we're actually people, and we like interacting with the community. So pending any questions, that's it. I think I'm pretty close to my 10 minutes, so.
Council, any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I would just like to say thank you for coming and giving this presentation. I think this, the Meaford Tank Range is something that I don't think many people in the public really know all that much about, so just that information there is actually really exciting, so thank you for coming and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
That open house, I think, is actually going to be really exciting as well, and I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can be a part of doing a social media blast or something, so we can be aware that we can spread that out as well to kind of help out with that as much as we can. And so
We'd love that if, like, we have our poster electronically that we can blast out. I know it's on any Facebook pages that my people are interact on. They're tagged, like, we're shamelessly tagging ourselves on there, but definitely, if you have any names or whatever, I will pass on to my social media people. And
perfect. I don't think you ever need to say that you're shamelessly plugging anything for what you do as a career. So I know you just mentioned the thing that you're giving back to our community. Well, you already do that. So we really appreciate the honesty, not the honesty, we really appreciate your modesty with it. And we're very thankful for everything that you do, and we're glad to be a part. You could be a part of our community. So thank you.
No, go ahead, Councillor Lemon.
Oh, Your Worship, I was just thinking we should get it on the local events page that we run. And I know, or I'm sure there are going to be posters in the Alva Legions around, because there are a fair number of members there that will be interested.
Yeah, we're working. It started last week of getting out and putting them out. Legions is one of the target places, and we've made sure that we've officially invited the Legion members just because of our tight connection with them. But yeah, the posters, you'll see them going up more and more. We didn't want people to get exhausted with hearing about it, so we're on our messaging campaign. As I said, last week and this week, so you will see them up and about.
So I've got two quick questions. Any idea how many full-time employees you'd have living in Grey County?
Within Grey County, so the total numbers, do we know off the top of our head?
Roughly.
We were looking, like, we think we have about 30 families in Owen Sound directly.
Alone. Wow.
Yeah, alone. So we definitely are spread out. We have a few eager people. I think it's like 3 or 4 that live in Wasaga Beach, and then the closer you get to Meaford, it increases, but we know there's 30 families here, and then we've got another probably 10 to 12 that live like Chatsworth and in and starting to push up towards Wyerton as well.
I guess I framed it too tightly. I was thinking Simcoe, Grey, sort of how many full-time families in total, but I just said Grey.
Yeah.
My other question is this. Now that you've been here for a little while, how many times off the site do you get people calling it by its proper name? Like, we all still call it the tank range. It's been like that forever.
Yeah, but in all transparency, we changed the name last year because it used to be the Land Force Central Area Training Center, and it seems to be every couple of years we get sick of names and we change them in the military. So we understand there's a lot of people that call it the tank range. There's also the Militia Support Training Center, which it used to be called about 20 years ago. So we just make sure we're updated with all the different titles, and we roll with it because we are our own worst enemy because we change things so often.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you for all the work that you do. Look forward to being out there on July 7th. What time do the gates open?
So 9:30?
9:30 until
5 o'clock.
Till 5.
5 p.m.
We hope we get lots of people out there. So thanks for coming in.
Should be great. Thanks, sir.
To both of you, thank you. Now, we're down to 9C, which is a presentation on the Downtown Rivers Precinct. I'm wondering if anyone would mind if we stood that down, number 10 down, public question period, in case there's any questions that come out of that, and 12A, which is the report, until Councillor McManaman can get here and we have a full council to discuss it. Any objection?
No, not at all.
So I can start with 12B then, which is a report for asphalt resurfacing.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a report from our purchasing agent to award the tender for the annual resurfacing program to Harold Sutherland, who had the lowest bid at $267,000. The tender includes resurfacing 1.2 kilometers of roads in about 6 different locations, and that's starting in October. The funding of the program will be from the remaining asphalt resurfacing budget of $160,000, allocating the concrete replacement budget of $67,000, as well as the cemetery paving, which is included in the scope of the tender. And council will also recall that a portion of the 2018 resurfacing budget has previously been allocated to resurfacing a section of 9th Ave East, and that was included in the tender for the 3rd Avenue East reconstruction.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor Bartley. I think it's, and I'll move the recommendation to award the tender there, but I think it's really important to note here what our asset management plan in total shows is about 250 kilometers of lane in Owen Sound. And with this asphalt work this year, including some of the roads which are not actually Owen Sounds, such as the county road from 10th Street to 14th Street, the East Bayshore section of 435 meters. What we're getting done, the component from 16th Street to 20th Street on 9th Avenue East, and what's in the report tonight is about 4.7 kilometers of total lane, and we've got about 250 kilometers in our asset management plan. So glad to move the recommendation, but we are barely scratching the surface at maintaining our needs on a go-forward basis here. And the longer the roads fall behind, it's not just shave and pave, it's more reconstruction that's needed alongside. So I think it's worth noting that those numbers.
Good, thank you. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Councilor
Just
Kepke.
a quick comment. I would certainly agree with the councillor. We constantly hear from residents that say, what about my road? And everyone thinks their road is worse than others, but I'm sure the city certainly takes a lot of time in looking at the ones that are on the priority list, and eventually we hope we will get to their roads as well.
And the alternative, we make that decision at budget time. So call the question, all in favor? That is carried. 12C.
Thank you, Worship. There has been an application for site plan approval through MC Architects on behalf of the Blue Water District School Board for Owen Sound District Secondary School. This property is well known to many of you and has access from 10th Street via 7th Avenue West, as well as from 9th Street East. The changes and site plan approval relate primarily to the south side of the school, to the entrance and to the parking area from that 9th Street West entrance. So what's being proposed? There's a new vestibule addition on the south side of the school. There'll be modification to the parking and bus loop. So right now, the bus loop and the parking lot are accessed through the same entrance, and those will be separated in the proposed plan, and there'll be a construction of a new 57-space parking lot that will replace the existing 29-space lot. There'll be a dedicated student drop-off area around that to help improve safety where students are being dropped off, and 2 of the tennis courts will be removed, leaving 4 tennis courts. There'll be a dedicated bike parking area, and there's 2 new sidewalk connections. One from the bus entrance along the edge of that to the main sidewalk in front of the school, and then one again from the sidewalk on 9th Street West around the drop-off area connecting to that main sidewalk. There's also proposed that there be signage on the 10th Street side that would say that it's an access to parking only, and that's not to be an area where students are dropped off. There was supporting documents submitted with the application, including a site plan, a stormwater management brief, as well as a scope traffic study. The plan was reviewed by Accessibility Advisory Committee, who noted there was 1 tactile plate missing, and that will be added, and they've also asked that site lighting be in accordance with the Ontario Building Code. So I mentioned that there had been a scope traffic study requested through our Engineering Services Division, not only to look at the entrances and the movement of traffic right at the school, but also to look at the traffic around the school sort of in a broader context. So that was done in partnership with the city. So So the provincial policy statement indicates that before consideration is given to developing new public service facilities, the use of existing facilities should be optimized and opportunities for adaptive reuse should be considered. So it's very positive that the board is proposing modifications to this site that maximize the use of the existing building within a settlement area that's fully serviced, consistent with the direction provided by the PPS. In terms of our official plan and zoning bylaw, the site is designated and zoned institutional, and the proposal does conform with our OP and the site and building requirements of the zoning bylaw. There is an agreement between the school board and the city with respect to the tennis courts. It doesn't require a minimum or maximum number of courts, and so there isn't a change in the agreement that's required for the reduction of the courts. I would note that the lighting will be eliminated. The school board doesn't need lighting, but there'll be conduit placed so that in the future, if the city or school board wanted to add lighting, that would be possible without significant work. As I mentioned, the traffic impact study examined the location of the bus loop and now the separate entrance on 9th Street East, as well as the parking and student drop-off areas. The entrances are appropriately spaced, and there will be changes to the traffic bylaw that will be recommended in the full traffic impact study that will come back through our Operations Advisory Committee. In terms of the required number of parking, there are 134 spaces required, and there are 192 provided on the site. 6 barrier-free are required and 10 are provided. There's 6 new barrier-free spaces in this 57-lot parking area that will be developed. They're type A and B spaces that have the provision for unloading between the spaces. They have both upright signage and the pavement marking. In terms of landscaping, there would be 4 trees removed as part of this project, and you can see along between 9th Street and the parking area, there'll be the addition of 8 autumn blaze maples that will enhance the streetscape in that area. The recommendation, Your Worship, is that Council would approve the site plan for the redevelopment of OSDSS by Blue Water School Board in accordance with the plan submitted by Macromichaelis Cugini, in accordance with the conditions laid out in Schedule A, and that Council would authorize a bylaw to execute a site plan agreement with the school board with no provision for security under that agreement.
Good, thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to move that recommendation.
Any questions, comments, discussion? Go ahead.
Thanks, Roy. I do have a couple questions. One particular is regarding the reference to, we've asked for a 3-meter road allowance to be taken back. The road as it is now from the tennis courts proceeding along the front of the school is already wider. So is this changing what's already there further? Or why are we doing that? Because I don't think there would be an assumption that at any time in our lifetimes we're going to widen that road back to the top of 9th Street Hill. That would literally be right on some of the doorsteps of those homes. So I was wondering why we've asked for that allowance and exactly what is that allowance? And I have a further question after.
Thank you, Worship. According to the comments provided through our Engineering Services Division, this portion of 9th Street West is a designated collector road in the city's official plan, which requires a minimum right-of-way of 25 meters. So a road widening of 3 meters is required along that 9th Street West frontage. There are provisions in our zoning bylaw that where the city does take a road widening, it's intended not to impact the developability of the property. So the plan that you've seen here will be able to proceed even with that road widening.
Okay, thanks. And I guess in general too, I have some difficulty with why we've asked for a traffic impact study on this. It's not that the high school is adding 200 or 300 students again moving forward. That's been done. That's a couple years ago, and it got to an enrollment which is similar to what it was 25 or 30 years ago. But now to ask for a traffic impact study when people that get dropped off 10th Street get dropped off there because it's a continuation of their travel downtown, so they pull in and they pull back out, and asking them to go to 9th Street, they're probably not going to do, regardless of the fact there could be signs on 10th Street. That's just the way their behavior is going to be. And then we're taking taxpayers, so we're telling them they have to do a traffic impact study, and then we're taking $5,000 of taxpayers' money to pay for it. And that just doesn't seem right either, because that 10th Street corridor, those monies were supposed to be directed to where we hear the complaints from, and that's in the downtown. So I guess I have an issue with why we're asking for a traffic impact study on this when the changes proposed aren't that big.
Dennis?
Thank you, Your Worship. The reason we asked for a traffic impact study is to determine if we could make some geometric improvements along 10th Street to improve traffic entering, I guess, make its way to and from the school. As well, at least it allows us to be able to plan for it. I mean, our whole mandate is to try and improve circulation within the community as much as possible, and especially 10th Street during the morning rush hours, you'll find there's a great deal of traffic, and if we can find some of those radiuses are pretty tight, maybe we can actually find this report should be able to generate some information for us to plan in the future to improve the situation as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Foss.
Okay, anyone else? Going to call the question then, all in favor? And that is carried, so that was 12C. Councilor McManaman is here. If we can go back to our deputation and presentation at 9C and then work through 9C, 10, technically 11 I skipped over, and then 12A.
Your Worship and members of council, this presentation on the Downtown River Precinct and Farmers Market follows up on the public input from the Public Information Center that was held in the fall of 2017 and then again in March of 2018. And it really builds on the Northwood vision, from public meetings in 2012. It is intended that this presentation will finalize the environmental assessment process. I want to recognize the team that has worked on this project, beginning with Kim Allerton and Northwood and Associates in 2012, GM Blue Plan, John and Andrea, who were engaged to undertake the municipal class EA, MMM, transportation engineers, as well as ASI, who did the archaeological assessment. A lot of information went into the formulation of this plan. Most importantly, I think it's important to thank the public, including the DIA, who've really stuck with us and been invested in this project since 2012. We have received a lot of feedback through the process, and that has been well documented through the environmental assessment process. We have a historic downtown, and the process of revitalization and renewal has been ongoing since the 1800s, and I think this project marks the continuation of that. So in terms of the presentation tonight, we'll look at the background and the goals of the project as it was envisioned in 2012. John will do an overview of the municipal class EA process. We'll look at the alternatives that were considered. We'll review the public input and the responses to those. We'll look at the recommended preferred solutions and then look at next steps. So let's for a few minutes just go back to the beginning. In 2012, the city retained Northwood and Associates to develop a concept plan for the River Precinct. So the idea was that using an urban design approach based on the 2001 Downtown Master Plan, that we would set out to develop a plan for the revitalization of this area, which was really from just south of 8th Street to 10th Street, and then all along the Sydenham River from 1st Avenue West to 1st Avenue East. The goals of the project were to strengthen and improve the character, making the space inviting and inclusive, strengthen the image and identity of the downtown, and really embrace and highlight the natural environment of the Sydenham River. The plan was developed in the context of significant public input in 2012. There was excitement and energy for the project that created this vision. In order to achieve the project goals, the recommendations in the Northwood conceptual design were considered during the environmental assessment process, including the following: the development of the continuous riverside trail linking the harbor to the mill dam, this wide pedestrian promenade along the top of the East Riverbank, the extension of the Percy England Parquet through to the top of the river, a market square focused on the river, and a civic square for special events, as well as the realignment of First Avenue East north of 8th Street. Additional recommendations pertaining to detailed design, so things like bike racks, benches, lighting, banner poles, will be further considered during the detailed design phase of this project. This was the resulting concept plan by Northwood, and in January of 2013, Council approved the plan in principle and directed that an environmental assessment would be initiated. In 2015, this council made implementing the Downtown River Precinct an action of your new strategic plan.
Thanks, Pam. Building on the direction of council to implement, work toward implementation of the River Precinct project or the concept developed by Northwood and all the previous work that was done. Our firm, G&B Blue Plan, was retained by the municipality to help with the push the process through what they call the municipal class environmental assessment process. This is another step to help advance the conceptual design to formalize the planning process toward developing the project, and then also as part of the work we were retained to do is to develop some functional design drawings to illustrate, I guess, how the pieces of the project would fit together. So the municipal class environmental assessment process we've undertaken it simultaneously takes on what we call a master plan, which looks at a systems-wide approach, the one-way pairs for all 4 block systems of the system, and more specifically, project related to the considered realignment of First Avenue East from the west side of the Farmers Market building to the east side of the Farmers Market building. These 2 elements, the one-way pairs for the master plan and the realignment of First Avenue East, were presented as what we called favored alternatives at the 2 public information centers and made available for public comment. This convoluted chart basically just describes the municipal class environmental assessment planning process. We'll go through all in detail, but basically phase 1 is identifying more clearly what the problem or opportunity is that the process intends to resolve. Phase 2 is developing the alternative solutions to that problem or opportunity and reviewing that in terms of the natural, social, economic environments. It's more than just the natural environment, it's all the different aspects, cultural heritage, all those types of environments are considered in the application of the different alternative solutions in order to come up with the appropriate solution. The yellow box there in the second green bar is the public information center. In this case, 1 was required under the process. 2 were held, as Pam referred to. Currently, I think we are now at the point where we've received public input and we're presenting our recommendation from the project team to council for their consideration, after which there's a process to take the next steps through to implementation, which I'll get into a little bit later on. So, building on Council's resolution of 2013, the project team developed this project statement, which reads, in recognition of the previous studies, the city wishes to reconnect the Sydenham River to the pedestrian environment and the downtown core by formalizing recognized opportunities in traffic flow, addressing existing deficiencies in urban design, and improving both the vehicular and pedestrian environments in the downtown river precinct. master plan component of the process, again, looking at the 4 block sections in terms of the operations, currently 2 of those 4 blocks are one-way and 2 of the 4 blocks are two-way traffic flow. So the alternatives we prepared were we do nothing with it, leave it alone, basically. Restore them perhaps to full two-way traffic, one-way pairs in a clockwise rotation, or close them entirely to through traffic, and see what each of those alternatives would look like under each of the environments, as I mentioned earlier. I specifically highlighted the clockwise rotation for alternative 3 because traffic study we received identified that the counterclockwise rotation would result in too many left turns working its way through the system and would be basically unworkable. Just wanted to comment on the scoped traffic study that was prepared by the MMM group, as Pam referred to, in 2016. It concluded, quoting here, the one-way clockwise option appears to provide the best combination of traffic operations and alignment with the city's desire to improve the streetscape in the downtown River Precinct. So that little quote there helps to guide some of the thinking through this master planning process. The farmers market part of the process, again, this is related to a specific project which looks at potentially relocating the First Avenue East from the west side of the farmers market building to the east side of the farmers market building. And the favored solution that was presented to the public was the relocation of that road for comment. So again, we had 2 public information centers as part of the process. One was necessary. We followed up with the second one with the project team. There were a variety of issues brought forward, and we've grouped them in this presentation to more global issues and some that are more specific to individual blocks. So 2 of the more global issues that we've identified were commercial downtown access relating to 10th Street, 9th Street, and truck access, and the second being parking. My mistake. There we go. To address these, the particular issue related to commercial downtown access, one of the restricted access was considered off of 10th Street into the downtown core. Basically, it evolves from a lot of the westbound traffic wanting to make a left turn off of 10th Street to go southbound into the core commercial area. That particular more global aspect was studied by another group, BTE, and it was addressed through what we call the corridor optimization study. Several of those recommendations are being considered and I believe implemented through other processes. Specific to this project, though, the First Avenue West, the 900 block, currently is two-way traffic, and this process, following the one-way alternative, that block would become one-way northbound, so there would be prohibited southbound moves on that block from 10th Street. And there was some interest in the number of vehicles being reduced. The traffic studies that were done suggest that that's a relatively minor number of vehicles that actually make that trip, and they can easily be accommodated at other intersections, and I'll get into that a little more detail later on. Another one of the global issues, potential interruption of traffic flow on 9th Street. The westbound lane, see here, the westbound left and eastbound right turn lanes are incorporated into the design. You'll see in this figure here, we've incorporated those two turning opportunities to get off of 9th Street onto southbound First Avenue East. And a southbound dedicated left turn lane is included in this functional design to illustrate how stacking for the drive-through would be removed from the through lane on First Avenue East. And so the provision of turning lanes is intended to address traffic flows on 9th Street. I'll get into some of these in a little more detail also. The truck access was another consideration. A question regarding large trucks navigating the turns from 9th Street, both east and westbound onto southbound First Avenue. So we've modeled the largest scale truck, 53-foot, to navigate those turns, and the red lines illustrate how that function can fit through the geometry of the intersection. And we've also identified that several of the trucks that make those deliveries are in fact much smaller than the one we have shown here. So the intersection throat geometry is verified for those large trucks. Pam was going to do another little bit on the next set of slides.
Another one of the global issues is the loss of parking. So recall the video that I made everyone watch at the March public meeting, and Streets Are for People, and the idea and one of the goals of the master plan is to make the space an inclusive people space, refocusing on the river. We will reduce parking. Within the study area, the project area, there are 191 spaces today, and 29 of those will be removed with the proposed option A. So this slide shows the area in blue is our parking downtown, and there's a lot of parking. So what we know, we rely on cars and we get uneasy when we start to think about parking and changing parking. But we have 830 spaces in municipal parking lots and on-street downtown, in addition to all the parking that's provided on private property shown in red. Within the municipal spaces, the 830 spaces are made up of 476 in lots and 374 on the street. We continue to collect data on how the parking is used, and I think next week Corporate Services will get an update on how that parking is being used. But I've had a sneak peek at that data, and it verifies the information we have from about a year and a half ago. We know that the complementary parking is in the optimal range, so it has about 60% use. The meters down about 35, so that's low optimal, and in the lots we see 30% use, which is considered quite low. So of the 830 parking spaces in the downtown, 29 of those spaces will be reduced, or an overall reduction of 3.5%. Even with this reduction, the study concludes that parking lots and spaces will be sufficient to meet demand in the downtown.
Okay, the next group of slides here speaks to some of the specific issues in each of the four individual block sections that we're looking at. The first one here is the 800 block of First Avenue West, so in front of the library and northerly front of the library. Currently that block is one-way northbound. The thought was presented at one of the public information centers. One of the comments we received was, would there be benefit in shifting the parking from the east side to the west side of the street? And so we sketched up the different arrangements and how that might work. And what we found is, looking at the west side, it may improve access to buildings. That was sort of the idea, that the parking would be on the same side as the buildings people would want to enter. But overall, considering the driveways that are already there on the west side of the street, that there would be fewer parking spaces than with the arrangement on the east side. There would be greater impacts to private property, as some of the driveways that are there now would not function the same way they do now. And there would be a less favorable roadway alternative. You'll see in the bottom slide, part of the bottom graphic there, the S-bends that would be necessary at each end to align the intersections at H Street, particularly to get around the Cenotaph and at 9th Street, to get around some of the bridge arrangements and whatnot there. Moving northerly, this is the 900 block of First Avenue West that comes out at 10th Street. Currently two-way traffic, looking at what it would look like as one-way northbound. Again, off of 10th Street, the graphic on the left side indicates a little red arrow there that says that indicates basically that the westbound left turns, so from 10th Street to going southbound on First Avenue West is currently prohibited. So that would not change, of course. The only moves that are available now at that intersection are the southbound throughs. So coming in from First Avenue west from 11th Street, coming south to 10th Street, you're permitted to go straight through there. And also, if you're heading east on 10th Street west, coming into First Avenue, you're permitted to make a right. So those are the two moves, the southbound through and the eastbound right, that would be prohibited under a one-way northbound scenario. And that number of trips is relatively small and can be accommodated quite readily at other intersections. This next block section is the 900 block of First Avenue East, where the Sydenham is currently being built, again from there up to northerly to 10th Street. Their comment was basically they should be doing more with this block. I think there are a lot of people that commented that right along the riverside, it's a nice area, could use a fair bit of sprucing up and perhaps even alternate uses for that block. Certain issues that came up through the process, a lot of the Riverbank lands are called Crown Patent lands, so they're outside of the road allowance that the city owns and controls. So there's some property issues related to those pieces of land. Currently, we call it an alleyscape type of environment that people are suggesting should be upgraded significantly to a more streetscape type of an environment. And one of the comments we've made pretty well consistently through the process is this block probably needs some short-term, medium-term, and long-term thinking and planning. And what might be done in the short term may not be the final result, but it might get the city community closer to a broader, longer vision. Another comment related to that same block, related I think to one of the previous versions of our functional design. The previous version of functional design didn't really include a designated truck loading zone. So we've altered the functional design to include a dedicated truck loading zone. We've also included a boulevard feature, which is really intended as a dual-purpose feature. So it would be available for loading zones, perhaps, so the larger vehicles could get off the traveled lane and into a boulevard feature. That's better. But also available for some of the businesses that back onto that space to maybe expand their offering from the backs of those businesses out onto the street and beyond the sidewalk, and to also include this boulevard. So about another 3 meters that might be available to accommodate those kinds of uses. So the say short-term plan, if you will, based on this functional design, the plan would be to accommodate business needs for both the vehicles, the deliveries, and pedestrians. This next block would be the 800 block of First Avenue East, so from the Farmers Market building out to 9th Street in the north. There were several comments we received regarding the trade-offs or benefits of one-way traffic flow versus two-way traffic flow. And so we sketched up what the one-way traffic would look like versus two-way. Basically, with the number of lanes required, the one-way traffic alternative would increase the potential to expand the pedestrian environment. The creation of more land available with the creation of multi-use pedestrian promenade along the riverbank. There's provision for truck loading zones. I'll show a little bit more about that later. Drive-through stacking, there's some interesting issues related to that, which I'll get into also. And the one-way movements would also decrease turning movement conflicts. So it's the left turns that always seem to be the trouble. The left turns that would, in a two-way system, would be left turns off of 8th Street to northbound, and those would be eliminated, so there'd be more through traffic opportunities on 8th Street. One other technical part of it is with there would be a widened throat width at 9th Street to accommodate 3 lanes in that arrangement. That pushes the westerly curb closer to the river, and in that configuration, it takes out a hydro pole, which has a fairly significant wiring system on it, and it would basically cause the realignment of that entire pole system, which would be very expensive to address. So with those considerations, the recommended solution is one way, which is consistent with the traffic study that we have received also. Again, more specifically to the drive-through operations at the corner of Tim Hortons there, the concern is that currently, you'll see in the photo in the top left corner, currently the northbound vehicles block the through lane in stacking to make a right into the Tim Hortons drive-through. And you can maybe see a little bit, not quite so clearly, but also vehicles that are southbound block the southbound through lane as well to make that same move into the Tim Hortons drive-through. So clearly not an ideal situation as it stands. So with one-way traffic operations, we've altered the functional design in a couple of ways. Notes, sorry. Getting ahead of myself a little bit. With the one-way south arrangement, we would be able to maintain a through lane while also having left turns available for drive-through stacking off of the through lane. So this arrangement would help to remove the cars from blocking the through lanes and prohibiting traffic flow, basically. The site plan approval requirements are for 12 vehicles to be stacked on site for a drive-through operation. In this particular case, this is already a permitted and site plan approved operation, and so the configuration we have shown here permits 7 on site, 4 additional ones within the on-street left turn lane, plus stacking opportunities available in the left and right turn lanes on 9th Street, for a total of 12 to 13, depending on how you want to count the 2 that are available on 9th Street. Truck deliveries was also a consideration for both Tim Hortons and for the Fulford's hardware stores downtown, and also for the deliveries from the Pizza operation on 9th Street. So to address those comments that we received, we met with Tim Hortons and with Fulford's organizations, and with, I believe, city staff also met directly with Pizza operations. The 9th Street loading zone, which currently is there to support Pizza would remain under this scenario, so that's not an issue. The Tim Hortons loading zone, we've adjusted the functional design drawings. What we heard from the Tim Hortons people is that offloading on 9th Street would not be appropriate for the use and the way they have to access their building. So they currently prefer, as you will see in the photo in the top left corner, they prefer currently to sit in the northbound through lane, which blocks that lane for traffic, and they offload off the back of the truck and up the driveway into their storage space on the south side of the building. So that kind of an access was important for that operation to maintain. And so with the one-way southbound traffic flow, we created a widened boulevard just south of the driveway entrance there. As you'll see in the middle graphic, there was a red truck depicted there that shows how that truck would be able to get off of the through lane to offload its goods and still access up the driveway and into the Tim Hortons storage area. So that offloading operation would be available in pretty much the same fashion as it is now, but without blocking through traffic. Similarly, with the Fulford's hardware loading zone, the one-way southbound also permits the widened boulevard to be extended across I was going to say the frontage, but I guess it's really the backside of the Fulford's operation. Similarly, with the truck off the road, off the through lane, where they can offload. Basically, how they operate it now is depicted in the second photo, the bottom photo there with the red truck. Another comment of interest in this particular block related to the intersection and the way traffic would operate at 8th Street with southbound moves. So basically the idea is to include both a left turn and right turn lane from First Avenue East accessing onto 8th Street. concern was southbound left turns might interfere with stacking on 8th Street East. So to address that, we've extended, in the functional design drawings, we've extended the left turning lane so those vehicles would, say southbound left from First Avenue East, making a left on 8th Street, would be entering into the extended turning lane. Potential sightline issues, I think there's currently more of an issue coming from the west side of the Farmers Market building for right-turning cars. Coming out of there, it's hard to see past the corner of the building. In this particular case, it's more the left turn move from First Avenue East in the realigned version, where you would be able to see past the building. The car is actually situated, the driver's eye would be situated further from the building, and so the visibility is improved in that scenario. And another comment we heard quite often really was there's a lack of a mid-block pedestrian crossing. So the pedestrian crossing opportunities right now are the signals controlled at 2nd Avenue East and 2nd Avenue West. So there was some interest in having a pedestrian activated crossing mid-block, as we've depicted on the left side of the graphic here. Kind of a very good idea, the project team felt, because it also helps to connect the Harbor Walking Trail system, which is going to be extended as part of this plan as well, connecting the Harbor Walking Trail through the west side of First Avenue West, and then crossing here at 8th Street to carry on down to Harrison Park ultimately. Part of the functional design that was presented to the public at the two public information centers included the idea of a sidewalk along the east side of First Avenue East. And there were several comments we received about whether or not this sidewalk is really necessary. The photo on the left shows how it currently is being used by pedestrians. Even though there is a sidewalk on the west side, it does get used by pedestrian traffic currently. Also, the idea is that the pedestrian promenade that's intended to be developed on the Riverbank may have broader functions, city functions, events planned, that type of a thing, which some may choose to walk through and take a part of, but others may choose to an alternate route to bypass events such as that. So it provides an alternate route for when events are planned on the pedestrian promenade. So the project team is recommending that sidewalk remain to gain access from 9th Street to 8th Street. Another particular comment was the general access considerations are found around the Farmers Market building, how that would be maintained or perhaps even improved under this scenario. The driveway entrance would still remain under this plan to the west of the Farmers Market building, but predominantly for vehicular access to parking on the west side and the north side of the pavilion, is shown in the two graphics to the left. So vendor access can be maintained to three sides of the building, as we've shown in the three slides there, the three pictures. There was some concern about the change in the pavilion size. The northerly portion of the pavilion that runs in east-west direction would have to be removed under this plan. It's currently not in fantastic shape, but the idea would be to rebuild that portion of the pavilion shifted more to the west and maintain the same basic footprint as is available now. The other question was, is there sufficient parking available for market operations? And under this plan, the number of parking spaces is basically maintained as existing. A particular note I wanted to make in this case is part of the vision is to harden the surface, we'll say, from the pavilion, the concrete floor of the pavilion, be a step down as normal curb height to keep vehicles from driving onto it. But from that point, the idea is to have a consistent hard surface out to about within a meter or so of the riverbank. So it'd all be flat. There'd be no definition between vehicle space and pedestrian space permanently, but the idea would be to create movable barriers to allow some flexibility between different kinds of uses. And so, as an example, on weekdays, the driveway entrance might be wide open with delineators set up to keep the vehicles away from the pedestrian environment along the riverbank. So allowing people to park in that space as they would in a normal parking lot. But on weekends, perhaps when the farmer's market is in play, the driveway entrance at that location on the west side of the building might be monitored and patrolled so that only farmer's market vendors could access that space, with the definitions between the pedestrian environment somewhat adjusted so people can move freely, a little more freely in that space. And another idea is when events are being planned in that space, the civic square idea, I guess you might refer to, the driveway entrance could be closed off entirely to prevent vehicles from accessing that space and opening it entirely up to pedestrians. So the idea of multi-use, multi-purpose, and adding some flexibility with the plan. And Pam has another group of slides.
So certainly the Festival of Northern Lights is a valued partner of the city, and they have a long history of providing light in some of our gloomiest months. After our September Public Information Center, we did get a letter from the festival, and we certainly appreciate their willingness to sort of embrace this change positively and really transform the festival in this area. So it brings us back to sort of the end, and really this is the plan as it is envisioned. And I just make one last comment. At the March 2018 meeting, we heard, well, what about bikes? And I mentioned that the detailed design will go to things like where will there be bike parking, but the red lines on this plan show where the bike routes are. So First Avenue's east and west are local roads. They don't require dedicated bike lanes, but it's important that we think about and ensure that we're planning for the movement of bikes through this area of the downtown river precinct. So those red lines do show the proposed bike linkages, both to the south, as John mentioned, to the Mill Dam, and then beyond to Harrison Park and north to the harbor. So the goal of the plan, again, was threefold: improve the character of the area, making it inviting and inclusive; strengthening and improving the image and identity of this area of the downtown; and enhance and highlight the Sydenham River. So we went back to the vision that was presented by Northwood in 2012, and that shows a wide pedestrian promenade along the bank on First Avenue East. A traffic expert was hired to study the current traffic in the downtown, and generally, with the exception of 10th Street, traffic functions okay downtown. There are some trouble spots, and the intersection of 9th Street and First Avenue East is one of those. The study collected a lot of data on the current situation, and the consultant was asked to consider the direction of traffic, the width of streets, etc., that was needed to inform the functional design that John would be asked to do. The study looked at various options and concluded that one-way pairs clockwise was the best combination of traffic operations and alignment to support the vision to improve the pedestrian area and the streetscape downtown. The one-way pairs would reduce traffic congestion at some intersections. Specifically, the right turns are much easier eliminating the lefts with the one-way pairs, which will improve traffic flow, reduce wait times, and conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles at intersections. One-way pairs also create more space for pedestrians outside of the road and minimize impacts to the existing parking. We've demonstrated that trucks, both 53 and 38 feet, as well as smaller trucks, would be able to navigate that turn at 9th Street and First Avenue East and access those stores. The dedicated turning lanes on 9th Street will assist with allowing traffic to flow through that area, as well as be able to either turn left from 9th Street or right off of 9th Street onto First Avenue in that 800 block. The dedicated turning lanes will also assist with traffic flow, and the stacking provided at Tim's will be an improvement and a change from the current situation where patrons block the street, creating a gridlock condition. Trucks for loading and unloading can and will be accommodated at the rear of stores in the 8 and 900 block. Loading and unloading for community living will not change, and staff and clients can either use the First Avenue East southbound to access the area through the City Hall parking lot, or come in off of 8th Street through the City Hall parking area to that existing loading and unloading space. I shared this thought with you in March, and I told you that I'd read an article from the Ontario Good Roads magazine, and it was an interview with Janet Sadiq Khan, and she's one of the world's foremost authorities on transportation and urban transformation, and she works with mayors around the world to reimagine and redesign their cities. And she says, but our cities change, people change, demographics change, technology changes, and so must our streets. They must evolve to meet more demands and more diverse needs. We can't get there by just saying no to projects, and we can't wait any longer to make the kinds of changes that we need.
And so with the work that's been done to date, the presentations to the public, the feedback we received, the modifications we've made to the functional design drawings, we come to that part of the process where council is being asked, I guess, to consider the recommended group of solutions through the process. So the master plan, one-way pairs in a clockwise rotation, is being recommended by the project team. In terms of that process, it's called Schedule A+ activity, which is actually pre-approved under the Environmental Assessment Act, subject to notification. It can be implemented at an appropriate time without further work, subject to council's decisions. The farmers market, part of the process, the Schedule B environmental assessment, which looks at relocating the road from the west side to the east side of the farmers market building. That's the recommended preferred solution. That process is, again, subject to council's acceptance of the recommended preferred solution. But that particular process has an additional step to it, which permits a 30-day public review period for additional comments or requests to the governing authority, which is the Ministry of the Environment, for these processes, so someone can ask the minister, review what's been done, and consider additional work if necessary. As I say, the next steps, the council's willingness, the resolution to accept the preferred solutions. So if that is the case, then we would post what we call the notice of completion, which is advertised in the paper, and have the project file available on the city's website for any other review and comments and whatnot. I say the master plan itself is pre-approved under the process and can proceed to detailed design subject to council's discretion. The farmers market EA, the road realignment, 30-day public review period after the posting of the notice of completion. If there is no Part 2 order request, then it can proceed to detailed design and implementation. If there is such a request from any member of the public who might be, they're certainly able to do that. If there is a request, the minister would review the work that was done through this process to make sure that the process appropriate was followed, and they consider the request and the work that was done, and then direct whether or not additional work should be carried out. Considering that none of that has to happen, eventually we would proceed. The process would proceed through to construction, and any commitments that are made as part of this process would be addressed at that time. I wanted to talk briefly about implementation because there's some questions around coordination of any of the implementation of this type of a project with the 10th Street Bridge project, which is also in the list of the to-do list. As I said, the one-way pairs version of the master plan can occur at any time. Might want to consider that when the 10th Street Bridge is out for reconstruction, that First Avenues East and West will be closed anyway. There would probably have to be some amendment to the traffic bylaw, which would permit cars to go in to the closure and then turn around and come back out during that phase. So timing of that would have to be considered. Construction projects clearly will also have to be phased. I don't think anyone has any idea that all four of these blocks would be undertaken at once. There's a significant amount of work involved in each one of them. So the idea would be do a piece at a time, whether it's a complete block or a partial block, subject to council's authorization, of course, and further public consideration of the detailed design stage for each of those projects. And of course, the phasing of implementation of any of those construction projects would be, have to consider the timing relative to 10th Street Bridge. The project team, I think, has considered that phase 1 would be considered as the First Avenue East 800 block, so from the Farmers Market building north to 9th Street. And timing of phase 1, of course, would be considered with that 10th Street project, and budget and council's discretion, of course. That's the end of our presentation.
Good. Thank you. In order, I think I'm going to go to question period next, then skip down to the report at 12A, and then we'll go through our questions and can go into discussion thereafter. So at number 10, is there any member of the public that wishes to ask a question? Now is the time to do it. Okay, you just step up, state your name.
My name is David Parsons, and I'm here tonight as chair of the Owen Sound Downtown Improvement Area, and I'm speaking on behalf of the board. Your Worship, honorable members of council, a provincial grant was received by the city in 1985 for consideration of developing the River Precinct. In 2013, Cameron Alton of Northwood Associates presented a concept, an outline of the River Precinct. This is where I come in. I attended many meetings at the library, and one of my first questions was, how much has the city invested in this? The answer at the time was nothing. It was a provincial grant. So I said, so what are next steps? And that's when at least some answers were had as to what was being proposed. I mentioned that I'm speaking on behalf of the board. The board has discussed in detail and met with both city officials and members of the DIA who will be impacted by the proposed river project. Adjustments to the plan have been made to address the majority of the concerned issues raised, and to that point I would like to particularly accolades should be given to our city manager, Pam Coulter, and the team that are involved, because they took a considerable amount of time to reach out to our DIA membership who would be impacted, and I believe that the majority of the questions and concerns were answered in a very professional manner. Is the plan perfect? No, but I would point out that the Owen Sound DIA board is unanimous in its support of moving forward with the River Precinct project. I have two questions. If in fact the city council were to in fact not go ahead with this tonight, what would the cost be at a future date to consider this again? And secondly, if passed, would the River Precinct proposal be considered in the 2019 Owen Sound City budget? Thank you.
Who wants to answer that? Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I wouldn't begin to guess what the future tender cost may be for the project, because we haven't tendered it yet, Mr. Parsons. Certainly, if council approves the resolutions tonight, it will come forward as part of the 2019 capital budget. And as Mr. Slocum pointed out earlier, certainly we have to look at a number of factors that may affect the exact timing. I certainly hope we can undertake the first phase in 2019. We can't commit to that based on some significant pre-work we may have to do in the 10th Street Bridge, but it would be my hope that with council's approval tonight, we could bring that forward, the first phase in the 2019 budget.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions. Is there anyone else that wishes to ask a question of council? I'll get you to state your name and ask your question.
Absolutely. My name is Lori Lemonyo. We have a family business called the Fabric Center in downtown on 9th Street. So we have two concerns. One of them, of course, is parking, which has always been a concern. But if we lose parking spots directly across from the river where our customers park, or in front of our store across from Tim Hortons, it will be detrimental to our business. The second, and there's a question with that, are we losing, because you're proposing a left turn, is there a parking spot lost in front of, a lot like on 9th Street?
In front of your store there? Go to staff.
Through your worship, there is one parking space removed on 9th Street. I'm just looking at John. I think that's in the functional design as it's proposed now.
So that would be one in front of our store. Are the parking spots in front of Tim Hortons lost as well?
Your worship, I believe that the functional design has a few parking spaces across from Tim Hortons that would be lost as well.
Yeah.
To create a little more green space at the top of the...
So, Pam, I'll get you to repeat that just because you...
I think the question is, are you talking about the spaces that are on 9th Street, or are you talking about the spaces that are on First Avenue?
On 9th Street at this time.
So those spaces remain, so...
So just the one in front of our store?
right.
And then the concern is how many are being lost for the green space?
Near that corner, overall, there's a reduction in 29 spaces. Near that corner, I'd say, again, we haven't done the detailed design, but it would be in the order of 5 to 7 spaces to create that pedestrian promenade at that corner.
Okay, so for our store, we're looking at losing approximately 8 customer parking spots. We have an older clientele who bring in sewing machines, so the close parking the proximity is a major concern. The second question goes to the green space, and we're happy to have green space. However, we have a problem with loitering along that area already. So my concern again, will this extra green space increase the loitering that already is a problem?
Thank you. Mr.
If I
Ritchie?
could, Your Worship, I was speaking with the Chief of Police today, and I can tell you, I think the police chief and the police board feel that by increasing the green space and the bringing everyone down to the core will alleviate to some extent the issues you described. Everybody doesn't agree with that theory. I can only tell you what our police chief, who is a professional, feels, and certainly most urban designers in North America have that same opinion.
Ms. Coulter, if you recall what Ms. Allerton said way back when on that, if you can pull it out of your memory.
Yeah, the Northwood presentation from 2012, and Lori, I'd be happy to share that with you, but the thinking is there was a slide and it was called, and it had a whole bunch of people sort of sitting in a space that would be designed like that area will be in it. It was entitled Loitering or Lingering. And the idea is to make this space inclusive. And so, people who work and live downtown should be in that space. Everybody can be in that space, not just one group or another group using it. It's intended to be inclusive. So we hope that there's lots of people there spending time, stopping at shops and enjoying events and great things to do downtown.
Thank you. That answer questions? That's best? Good, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Okay, so at number 11 on our agenda, we have no correspondence. 12A is the report. If there's anything, Ms. Colby, you want to add to the report of 12A?
No further comments on the report,
So
Your
the
Worship.
report is there and straight ahead. So this time I want to go to council questions, so we can ask the presenters of the report and get some answers, and then we're all on the same page. So anyone that has questions, now's the time to ask.
You were going to start over there.
No, not yet. No, my memo is to start with questions. Go ahead, Councilor O'Leary.
Okay, either John or Pam, I'm not sure which, we talked about, or you showed the pie chart for our downtown parking. So we're losing 29 parking spaces. Do we know what the percentage is that's utilized of our downtown parking, generally speaking?
Scott's going to be next.
Through you, Your Worship, the on-street complimentary parking is estimated to be used at around 60%. The long-term lots are used around 30%, which is considered low, and I'm missing one. And that, just let me find it here. I think it's 35, I just can't remember what the category of parking is. Just one second. Sorry. Oh, meters, that's right. Sorry, so on-street complimentary, used 60%, which is still, it's considered optimal. Metered spaces are used 35%, which is considered low optimal, and lots are used 30%, which is considered low. So even with the reduction of 29 spaces, the use still will fall within that optimal range, actually low optimal. So we really do feel there's sufficient parking in the downtown with the loss of spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gregg, you had your hand up next.
Thanks. Just a couple questions. The last plan that was shown, it kind of illustrated that there was more green space than what the schematics or the engineering drawings, particularly to the west of the farmers market. I was just wondering, have we kind of narrowed those entranceways going in and been able to gain back some of the riverside, not all in green space, but some of that promenade that was discussed, or is there a lot of that being lost to what looks to be fully a two-way street? Like in the designs, it looked like a two-way street, but then in the last slide, it looked like it was a much narrower entranceway to the west of the market again. So it looked like we were maintaining or actually gaining more of that promenade back.
That one?
No, it was, I think, the very last one. But that was the engineering design where it looked like we were really just having two-way streets now going in off of 8th Street. That one, it looks to be much narrower again in scope. And that looks to be back towards our original plan. I'm kind of wondering what is it, or is it both? I'm not sure how if you can answer that, or...
Just to clarify the question, firstly for me, I believe you're speaking of the planned driveway entrance on the west side of the farmers market?
Correct, right there.
Which is shown here?
Yeah.
Okay. So currently that is the two-way road configuration. I believe there's also a bit of a turning lane in there as well. So it would be somewhat narrowed. I think what's important to maintain a two-way access, so ingress and egress from that. It'd be a standard driveway width rather than road width, so those lanes could be narrowed from what is there now. But it would only be a two-way access rather than perhaps closer to three-way now and narrower lanes.
Okay, that helps. Thank you very much for that. I have another question, and it's not big, but when you are exiting off of First Avenue South, or First Avenue East-South bound at 8th Street, I think we've seen, let's see, the view that you must have, or we saw it in the site plan for OSDSS, is 5 meters by 5 meters of sight line. So if you are a vehicle, how can we ensure that pedestrian contact or conflict doesn't occur when pedestrians are walking in front of the farmer's market and passing across there? Just because I know from history, that intersection west of the market, when vehicles make the right-hand turn, often people look left, and when they don't see anything coming, they hit the gas. And I know there's a lot of school kids walking with backpacks and so forth there. Even, are we able to put a mirror up? You see mirrors sometimes in different places municipalities use that will assist with that? Or how big is that sight line for vehicles going around that turn there with the market building?
The two moves are there. I If I understand the question, you're speaking of the southbound right turn move from First Avenue East onto 8th Street?
Correct, that's the dangerous
The
turn.
visibility for pedestrians
For
coming
particularly
along
children.
the north sidewalk. The functional design as it stands now, first of all, that would be a stop-controlled intersection with a stop bar painted, and some of this is still subject to, of course, a detailed design phase. But the functional design as it's set up now would include a widened sidewalk down the east side of the Farmers Market building. So that would push that traffic move further away from the building to provide a little additional visibility for anyone coming across the front of the market building itself.
Okay, thank you. Question, Ben, is the actual green space on the riverbank, all the diagrams show it being nicely cut and maintained. Is that in fact the case? Or like, are we going to just get rid of the shrubs, vegetation, and leave the trees? What is the kind of the plan there, and what, have we got a ballpark of the kind of cost that would go alongside that?
The idea, through your worship, is that we really, from the top of the bank toward where the side or the curb is today, that area will be hardscaped. So whether that's pavers or stamped concrete or some combination of that. But if we're wanting it to be a busy people place and this wide pedestrian multi-purpose promenade, it needs to be hard surfaced. It needs to have street trees to make it a great place to be. The riverbank area, so from the top of bank down to the river, will be cleaned up, but certainly the trees, the mature trees that are there today will be retained. Some of the overgrown shrubs, I think, might be removed so that there's a nice view of the river, but again, that would be sort of a detailed design item.
And just one last question that popped up. We just had a lady here bring forth some comments or concerns. I'm just wondering, in our process, when parking like that is being taken away from a merchant right in front of them, how do we contact them, or in this case, maybe how do we not contact them and we miss getting that information until just now?
So through this process, there was public notice given in September. I know we reached out to the DIA to reach out to your members, so I don't know if the store is a DIA member. We did notices in the paper, we did notices on our website. Chris, what am I missing in terms of public notice? We did social media, we developed a web page, so we did do our very best to reach out to, not only the DIA, but the general public.
Okay, thank you.
Done? Okay, Arlene?
Thank you. Through your worship, just looking at that picture, and that's just exactly what my question is about. The width of the road is, I thought, was around 30 feet. Is that right, or is that the width of a road?
Through your worship, I think of the average lane width as 3.5 meters, or about 11 feet. So it'd be something, a two-way road would be somewhere in the range of 7 meters or 22 feet.
Okay, so what is the distance between the road and the back of City Hall there? Do you know offhand? It doesn't say anything on there, but on any of the diagrams, but do you know what the distance is?
No, I can't say what that is offhand. The roadway would be approximately 7 meters wide. Not much more different than the existing driveway that exists in the parking lot. It's pushed, as John mentioned, it's pushed away a little bit from the farmers market building to incorporate a sidewalk, a wider sidewalk, which improves the sight triangles and also the pedestrian space.
Right. And is there still going to be parking behind City Hall?
Yes.
And how are they going to get in there? Is there going to be another driveway in City Hall?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. They're not going to be able to go off that road into City Hall?
There will be an in-only driveway to the City Hall parking lot. There will be no exit. In order, you can access the City Hall parking lot by turning left or right into it, but to exit the parking lot, you'll have to enter onto the newly aligned First Avenue East, and then go southbound and make your right or left-hand turn movement at 8th Street.
Okay, now, off of First Avenue, there's not going to be a turn into City Hall?
No. If you want to access the City Hall parking lot, there'll be a one-way in, and then to leave, you'll have to go southbound onto 8th Street. There's no, okay. Thanks, Pam.
I think the counselor is wondering, from the newly aligned First Avenue southbound, can you turn into the City Hall parking?
Yes.
You can.
And you can?
Yes.
So right now, there's 3 entrances off of 8th Street into this area. There's one that comes into City Hall parking lot here, it's an in and an out. It will be an in only, so you come into the City Hall parking lot, when you're leaving, you'll come out here and exit onto First. There'll still be a number of parking spaces along the market apron, and so when you leave those spaces, you can come out here. There'll be a number of spaces here that will function as market space for vendors on Saturday. It might be special event space, but when it's not being used for that, there'd be a limited number of parking spaces, just like there are now where the chip wagon is on the west side of the farmer's market deck. Those cars would be able to come in and out off of 8th Street, small number of cars, and they would be able to again, exit right there. So still 3 entrance-exit points on 8th Street with the new pedestrian area. So still lots of opportunity to get into that City Hall parking lot.
I'm amazed, because I just don't think there's enough room behind City Hall to do all that, but anyway.
Councilor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. 3 questions. The first, we haven't discussed cost. I know we're going to get into the detailed phase design. To the city manager, do we have a projected budget for what this investment might cost?
I believe our estimate is something in the neighborhood of $1.2 million, but we really won't know till we go to tender.
Fair enough. Thank you. Second question, I guess it's also to the city manager, the discussion around the timing of this project in 10th Street. An answer was given. I'm just, because I think this is a pretty key point for a number of people. If this project is approved tonight, how does it work with the timing, with the anticipated reconstruction of 10th Street in 2020?
Thank you. Through your worship, certainly I think we're fortunate on both these projects that Mr. Slocum and his team are the consultants for both projects, the EA process. So certainly we're always talking about a team. The 10th Street Bridge also has a team, and we will be working with that team and Mr. Slocum and his staff to make sure we coordinate how both those projects come together. They're separate, but certainly any of us who live in this town, we know they are connected. So we will be looking at, we know the bridge has to be started and at least spent 90% of $3.5 million by December of 2020. So the bridge will be undertaken in 2020. What work has to be done in advance of that? Mr. Webb, Mr. Slocum, Mr. Kafalis will be giving a full report to Council during the 2019 budget process, and Council will see exactly the timelines and how they work. And believe me, if they do not work, we will not be doing the first phase of the River Precinct in 2019, no matter how much we may wish that to happen. So I can't tell you much more than that at this time, but I think we are blessed to have many members of both teams working on both projects.
Go ahead. And my third question, we've had a lot of theoretical discussion from engineers about how this one-way might work, that intersection might work. I was wondering, do we have comments from the police, the people that are actually on the ground enforcing, doing it? Is there any comment from them? I'd be interested to hear their view. Do we have that, or do we know what the...
I can mention, Your Worship, that I did talk to the Chief of Police today. I know Ms. Coulter has also spoken to the Chief of Police. They support that plan. They support that detail that they've seen so far. They support it. They think this is the best alignment that that we can get in that area.
Maybe go to Councillor O'Leary just to answer that. He may have...
Yeah, just on that, through you, Your Worship, I did bring it up at the last police board meeting, and it was discussed in detail. Everyone in the police board is in favor of the one-way street, safer. It's going to really help the traffic. They talked about the lineups for Tim Hortons. You know, when you turn onto First Avenue, bang, you run into two lineups, one on each side of the street, but right smack in the middle, and 100% behind it.
Others? Councillor Lemon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a number of questions. And number one, talked about the wood trees shall remain. But there's an awful lot of trees there that have dead tops, branches, that type of thing. I hope we'll do a complete inventory to look at them, because some of them are just waiting to fall into the river. And it really doesn't look that attractive. One of the questions is impact on the bus routes. Have we looked at that?
Anyone have an answer?
At this time, Your Worship, I don't believe we've had any input from our contractor, but, you know, we can certainly look at that.
Okay, and the other thing, I hope when we're doing this, that we will get, and tonight was brought out how low the utilization is of our long-term bonds. And I think there may be a reason in that is we lack adequate directional signage to that area. And that might alleviate some of the other problems if people were utilizing the long-term lots. We need those big, ugly P signs that you see in a lot of municipalities, like most of them, if not all of them, except us.
Through you, Your Worship, we're certainly working on that initiative with another team.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Councillor Thomas? Todd? Anyone else? Okay, I have a couple of quick ones. Mr. Slocum, 9th Street, 1st Avenue West. You're going to have a backup lane. What happens if cars turning left and right off of 9th Street start to back up to get into that turn-in lane, and specifically from 10th Street from 9th Street west eastbound on the bridge, trying to get across the lane that would go straight through in order to get into that holding lane? Do you have concerns about that? Well, coming from the west eastbound, so on the bridge there. So right there you show one car in a holding pattern. You've got the turning right lane. So you're heading eastbound. You're going to have to cross the through route straight through in order to get into that holding lane next to Tim's. Is there a problem there?
Your Worship, I guess the idea there would be that if there's space available in that left turn stacking lane to the Tim Hortons drive-through, then it would not be a significant challenge to make that move.
They would hold there instead of blocking the lane?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, good, thank you. And why are we recommending one lane versus two through that area? Either Pam can answer, either, maybe I didn't.
One-way pair?
Yeah, versus two-way. I think you hit on one was traffic flow.
Yeah, I think the one-way pairs eliminate those the left-hand turn conflicts at those intersections, both at 10th and 9th. You know, one of the reasons that we started the process was to increase the the people space along the top of the riverbank and take some of that area back for people, and the one-way pairs help maximize that space for people along the top of the river.
Okay, so it's maximizing the parkland or the people space. Okay, good, thank you. Sometime within the last couple of years, and it's a blur, we looked at listing lot 8 or 9, and I believe it's 9, as surplus. Does that make sense anymore? No one knew, whatever, there was somebody apparently interested in it, that hasn't happened. Would it not make sense to back out of that at some point and hold those spots to make sure that we've got enough spots downtown until we're through this to know if it works or not?
Certainly, Your Worship, we will not consider selling lot, Curtis, 8 or 9? 9. We would not consider that, certainly during this period. I agree.
But it's still listed as surplus?
We don't have it listed for sale, but it is declared surplus.
Okay, that's maybe a matter for discussion for a different day. We talked about the sidewalk running along the east side of First Avenue East between 9th Street and 9th Street and 8th Street. Is that going to be a barrier to cars getting in and out of the back of Fulford's, the back of any of those businesses along there?
Your Worship, the functional design drawings that were prepared for that version of the access, there would be what we call a drop curb or a mountable curb along the east side of that traveled lane. So vehicles would be able to leave the traveled lane and climb over this mountable curb into a boulevard space. The sidewalk would be at the same level as the boulevard space, with tying into the existing grade behind the sidewalk. So it would be a smooth transition from one side to the other.
So that isn't a whole lot different than the end of my laneway over a sidewalk?
That's correct.
Okay, good, thank you. That answers my questions. So now I'm going to go to council and state sort of what your principles are, what you're thinking, and then we can go from discussion. I'm going to start with Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's my intent then to move the recommendation contained in the staff report regarding the Downtown River Precinct. But first I want to thank staff and GM Blue Plan for the very detailed presentation they made tonight to show us all as much as they can, the details that have been presented to date. I know everyone's worked very long, hard hours on this and to bring this project forward and recommend what they have to council. The Downtown River Precinct project has certainly been one that's been somewhat controversial. On one hand, some business owners are concerned about traffic and confusion that they feel will be created due to the redesign of the one-way street going along First Avenue West. While on the other hand, many business owners and members of the public are thrilled with the design and idea that there will be a pedestrian-friendly area and atmosphere developed near the market building. I feel staff and the design consultants have done all they can to this point to present the best plan moving forward. They've listened to the concerns of business owners and the general public and incorporated some changes into the plans to accommodate those concerns raised. The important factor to me is that the area is being redeveloped to create a more pedestrian-friendly atmosphere in our downtown and to develop an area that can be used to host small events and artisans in conjunction with these events. I realize there will be changes to the location and type of displays the Festival of Northern Lights will have in the northwest section of First Avenue East, but I look forward to their creativity to work with the changed Riverbank area. Someone once said, human progress has always been driven by a sense of adventure and unconventional thinking. This council has been known for moving forward in a progressive manner to the best of their ability for the citizens of Owen Sound to make Owen Sound a place where you want to live, visit, and enjoy. So let's not stop now. Given that the preferred plan being presented tonight will be subject to a further 30-day public review period through the Ministry of Environment, I'm certain as a project undergoes detailed design that there will be room for adjustments and those detailed plans will come back to council again for review and approval. I'm in favor of the enhancements being suggested to the area behind City Hall and moving forward with the preferred plan of the downtown river precinct presented this evening, and I certainly look forward to this area being redeveloped.
Thank you. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Worship. I look forward to turning on to First Avenue East and not run into two lineups for Tim Hortons right in the middle of the road in both directions. I like the addition of the east side sidewalk. Now people have a choice, and it certainly makes it safer. I think when City Hall is functioning and you watch people at noon hour leave the building on the west side and walk down First Avenue, they all walk down on the east side of that road. So I've even watched during construction, the construction workers that walk down to Tim Hortons, they all walk on the east side. So I think that sidewalk on the other side should make a big difference. Moving the entrance to 8th Street to the other side of the Market Building certainly improves the sight lines. The one-way street removes any congestion at Tim Hortons entrance and provides a safer traffic flow. I've talked with professionals, including engineers and the Owen Sound City Police. All are in favor of the one-way street. And I did ask for some traffic counts, and it hasn't really been talked about much, but I asked what the traffic counts were for First Avenue East where the one-way street is, and it's only 1,200 cars a day. And if you compare that to, say, 10th Street, like our 10th Street Bridge has a little over 17,000 cars a day. And interestingly enough, the general traffic volumes are down 23% overall. So the latest numbers are for 2016. So in 2006, 10th Street Bridge had over 25,000 cars a day. 2016, just a little over 17,000. So the traffic volume has actually gone down. And I just wanted to throw that in there because I think, you know, people that are talking about traffic problems on First Avenue East, 1,200 cars a day certainly isn't, it's 50 cars an hour. So it's really not. Anyway, I will be voting in favor of the recommendation, and I look forward to this project getting done. I think this council is a council that is moving forward and is looking to get things done, and I'm really excited about this project. I also want to congratulate Pam Colder and her staff and all our engineers. This has been a long process, and you've all done a great job. Thank you.
Jim? Councilor McMahon?
Thank you, Worship. A few notes jotted down here. Some of them might sound familiar. I think the chair of the DIA might have been reading over my shoulder. I'm not exactly sure where to start. Maybe I'll start with the public input. I'm not sure in any projects in my time that we've had more public input and public engagement into a project than this. Starting in 2012, I remember the meeting, there had to be 50 people there, all excited about us making an investment in the downtown. Of course, we're all going to argue about the details, but let's focus on an investment in the downtown. So I'm not sure there's been more public engagement, more public input. We just saw I don't know how many slides that was we saw there. It's got to be 75 slides answering people's specific questions about loading or a new sidewalk or parking. And again, I want to point out, because there is this, sometimes in this day and age, this feeling of, if someone doesn't agree with you, it means they're not listening to you. It means they're ignoring you. It means they're discarding your opinion, and that's not true. Every member of council here has received every bit of correspondence, every email, every concern. And to the best of my knowledge, they've been answered to the best of our abilities by the experts and sometimes by council. That doesn't mean we can't have a disagreement. You might have a difference of opinion. That's fine, but please, people out there saying we ignored your concerns, that's not accurate. That's not true. When I look back, when council of the day decided to do the big dig, and I think, holy smoke, that must have been a very scary time. We're going to dig up your entire main street for great long periods of time, talk about business interruption and problems and concerns, and yet, would there be anybody today that doesn't say that was the right decision? There was short-term pain, no doubt about it, but long-term gain, holy smoke, look at our downtown. And I think, And then I got thinking of another large project we've done, the Bayshore Community Center. Couldn't be much more controversial than that was when this was built. Can you imagine our community without the Bayshore Community Center right now? The rec center, fairly controversial. I hope the same feeling will be there as well. What would our community be like if we hadn't moved forward? Nothing's perfect. No project is perfect. This project won't be perfect. There will be concerns. There will be issues. We'll need to work through them. But I think when we look at a $1.5 million investment in our downtown, this is the next phase, the next big dig, if you will, in our community. And for those that say don't move forward, I say to them, please consider the cost of doing nothing, because there is a cost. We can, that $1.5 million that's going to be invested in our downtown, if this is turned down tonight, Mr. Kafalis has got 10 projects we could spend $1.5 million on. We all know that. There's a long, long laundry list of items that need to be done. But the cost of doing nothing with this project in our downtown, I think, is immeasurable, and we must, just like those other projects, the other big dig, and the other ones I spoke of, we must step forward. We must all work together. And I encourage those people, even the people that don't necessarily agree wholeheartedly with this project, let's work together for our community, and let's make this work, because I think we need to take a chance. If we just sit here and do nothing, how are we going to improve that area? And to Ms. Lemon's comments about loitering issues and other issues in that area, we know there's issues in that area. For sure there are. That's on council. If this moves forward and we have a beautiful river precinct area, council, the police force, the city staff, they all need to move forward on this. This is just one part. We have to follow through on it. So anyway, Your Worship, that's my long-winded way of saying I will support the recommendation wholeheartedly, and I hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, Mayor. I can be a little briefer than that. I said years ago that...
Can be or will be.
I will be. I said years ago that our downtown is the identity to any community. And we, for a long time, have had the river there that we haven't taken advantage of. So this is our first opportunity to try to improve a great natural wonder that's right in our backyard that's just laid kind of dormant and silent for a long time. And I mean, yes, there's a cost to this, but there is a need to do that road reconstruction anyway. So this isn't like we've got brand new infrastructure underground and we're ripping it all up for a new plan. This has infrastructure that's so old it's testing the accuracy of carbon dating. So the work has to be done. For me, the next choice would be, and it would be contingent on the blessing of the electorate at budget time, would be just regarding the timing of when to proceed in conjunction with the 10th Street Bridge. So I'm supportive of the motion as it is. Thanks.
Thanks. This is one of these tough decisions, maybe one of our toughest, one of the top 3 toughest we've probably had in 4 years. We've been looking at it for a number of years. It isn't going to be supported by everybody in our community. It's not supposed to be. That's what democracy is. You're supposed to have different opinions around the table and around the community, and people are passionate about it. So that's good, and it sort of touches on what Jim just said. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, planning was all about living in a cute little cookie-cutter neighborhood in the suburb that your house looked like everyone else's in the neighborhood, and Lord help you if you came home impaired and ended up in the wrong house. All the roads were built to drive downtown, work in the core, but live somewhere else. Cities failed. New York failed. Detroit's clearly failed as people moved out in the suburbs and there wasn't the finances to support the downtown. Chicago and Toronto were different because they used what they call it? They used the municipalities around them and they amalgamated into metro. They metroized to fund things, and then we remember I'm on for half an hour here on history. After a shoeshine boy was murdered in downtown Toronto, David Crombie was in there at the time and went to bat and started to move people back into the core because it was getting dangerous like big cities, and started to really push people into the core. Now current planning is all about enhancing life downtown and rejuvenating streetscapes and parkland and trying to get people to live downtown. Councils previous to us had some of that foresight when they approved OSCDI being built, and how many residents have come into the core. Corbett Place, Center Suites, Sydenham, all those things are going to bring people into the core, and it's important to have the parkland and that the whole atmosphere around it. As we look at all the magazines that we get from Municipal World, for example, article by Catherine Loftman, award-winning, international recognized trailblazer in science and quality of life. The New Frontier. Emerging research has confirmed the incredible power of place. Majority of young talent today prioritize place quality over the job they ultimately choose. Job satisfaction is related to a feeling of place. Local economy growth is related to place quality. Everything is about having the right place. Why urban areas continue to need parks. Same magazine, bringing the peaches back to Main Street. Farmers markets as a tool for community regeneration. Landscape architecture is all about bringing people downtown. Bringing the public into public places, another great article. All of them are about modern planning, is getting people to live downtown, and we look at Toronto now with all the condos, all the parkland. We're not Toronto, but this is a great opportunity to be more attractive to the millennials that we're trying to attract with our You Most campaign that Travis is going to talk about later, that businesses that we have in Main Street opened by people under 40 that are successful and are moving us forward. That's where the future is going to be. We can make decisions for today about us, but these decisions are going to affect the next generation that are more on either side of me than for me. So I think it's important to take this step. It's the first major step we've taken in downtown in many years, other than the big dig. Talking about one-way streets and whether that's good. So when my dad was in the clothing business, we were between 9th Street and 10th Street. We backed into First Avenue East. Not only did we have a one-way street, we had a train that came up and down it for about an hour every day that moved from west side to east side. Somehow we still got trucks to us. There was Thompson's Furniture, Adams Furniture, McKay's Dry Goods, Kresge's Rollers, People's, Lou's Restaurant. Everybody seemed to be able to get their shipments in and get their deliveries, especially the hardware stores that had big trucks, and it worked. At that point, that was the block to be in, and now it's returning, hopefully, with the Artist Co-op and Burbridge and others in that next block. It'll start to balance back out in that. So I think this is something necessary. It's not going to be loved by everybody, and that's, again, that's democracy. I'm in favor of it.
I just, thank you. You know, it has been going on for a long time. Dave mentioned a number of years, and I know it's been even before 2013, Dave, when we finally got to see the plans at the library. This council talked about doing something with the river and making it more attractive. We're so fortunate to have a river run through our downtown community. Not too many communities have that luxury that we have, and we really haven't done anything with it until we have this plan in place, and I can hardly wait to get started on it. I think it's an exciting thing to do, and we've visited other communities, and we have seen what they've done with the riverfront. In Stratford, for instance, there's a lot of little nice stores that open up back onto the river, and it's just things that have happened down there that are pretty nice, and in other areas too. We can make this plan that we've got is going to showcase our downtown area, and I'm very excited about it. I can't wait for the one-way streets. Having grown up on one-way streets, I just, they're marvelous. to have, and they're easy to get around on. I just, I think the potential that we have here and what we're doing now is, as Ian said, it's something that we're doing for the future. It is something we're doing for the future. This council has made a lot of decisions that affect the future, and Councillor McManaman mentioned them, the things that we have done to make life better in this community. I just think makes me proud, actually, to be on council and to see what we are doing and not afraid to make the decisions, even though some of them have not been popular. They've all turned out very well. So, you know, it takes a strong council to make these strong decisions, and by God, we certainly have done the decision-making here, and I wholeheartedly support this and can't wait to get it going.
Thanks. Travis?
Thank you, Worship. I guess it's, this is the trouble of going 7th. Don't really have much more to say. That's going to be a repeat, but creating a vibrant downtown is creating a thriving atmosphere which will draw both residents and tourists to visit and spend time in our downtown core. We have preached for years that residential development in our core and for residential development in our core, and it's happening. With increased foot traffic, more people will be in and out of our storefronts and supporting our local retailers and helping to keep jobs in our core. The more vibrancy our core has, the fewer vacant storefronts we hope to see. This plan is meant to help our local business, not to hurt it. We've all visited those cities, as everyone else has mentioned, have seen the successes that other municipalities that have focused on their riverfront and waterfront properties. We should be proud to showcase our natural waterways that run through our city. With this plan, we'll have a connecting route from our harbor walls through to our riverbanks and further to our downtown core. We're witnessing the successes at the Mudtown Brewery, which I think will only lead to further developments around our water. During our last economic development meeting, Jackie Furtner, a downtown storefront owner, made a presentation regarding downtown revitalization. One of the topics included was the need for an outdoor space that draws people there to hang out and be able to do different activities, which is also creating an inviting space. That's how I envision that Farmers Market Square. I support this plan because I can envision its end potential. There will be some challenges initially, but that shouldn't deter change, especially considering we all know what the potential our downtown has. So we'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lemon?
Well, I'm not a great fan of one-way streets. However, in this particular case, that's the only way we can go with the limitations of geography. I'm really happy that this is coming to a vote tonight, and the reason being that when I worked for CFOS as a reporter a few years ago, there was this Davison-Smith report on redoing the Civic Square. And there have been other reports, and reports, and reports. And it's time now to take action. Ironically, the person who preceded me, Travis, was born the year we annexed the area we're now servicing in the former Southern Township. And probably Travis was born about the time that the Davison-Smith study was done. And nothing happened out of it. If you're going to do a study and it comes to some positive conclusions, it's incumbent upon the council to take that investment we've already made and make sure we get the benefit of it. I think that peopleizing the downtown is the way to go. I think green space, getting the river as a focus in our community. I mean, how many cities can you walk out of the back door of City Hall, go down to the river, catch a salmon, and take it home for dinner? We used to have an employee who used to do that quite regularly. That's how he took his lunch hour, catching fish on the Sydenham. So, is this a good idea? Yes. Will there be some issues? Yes. But if you don't start, you'll never get there. And we're starting, and I'm voting definitely in favor of it.
Good, thank you. Councillor Thomas? I think there's a book in that fish story, isn't there?
Well, I'm just wondering, I didn't see a dock built in anywhere down there so that people can fish at lunchtime.
You just fish off the shore, you know.
Is that an allowed use, though? That's the question. Yes, it is. Well, your worship, it's a blessing and a curse to be last. I'm never afraid to step outside of the group, and I'm going to be doing that in this case. I will not be supporting the recommendation. My lack of support, though, has nothing to do with the plan itself. I think the plan is a good plan. I agree that something needs to be done down there. When I moved here as a news reporter in 1986, I remember one of the first stories was a meeting with Eric Clough, who was running the DIA at that time, and presented a complete plan for turning the entire downtown around and facing the stores all out towards the river, to capitalize on that. And I agree, it's a no-brainer. The problem that I have with this is, I think that all truly successful projects bring your community along with you. And we've heard a lot of commentary about the excitement of the community and the people who are excited. But I'm afraid the people who are not excited about this are the people who are most directly affected by this project. And I think unless we can do some more reaching out and bring those people along, I cannot support this project at this point. I've spoken to every single one of the business owners along the first block to be developed between 8th and 9th Streets. Very few are in support of the plan as it stands now. And I guess that the thing that really got me when I was considering this was the real sense of defeat that several of them actually spoke to me with when I went in to talk to them. The sense that the city was going to go ahead and do what it was going to do, no matter what they thought about their block, no matter what they thought about how things would work for them on their block. And that's something that I'm just fundamentally opposed to. I didn't run for council because I wanted to be on a council that pushed people into things they didn't want without considering their opinions. Now, I know we've talked about considering opinions, but several other councillors were at a meeting towards the end of May, put on by a downtown business owner, and I think we heard loud and clear that they were not overall in support of this plan. I don't think personally that we're far away from gaining their support, and I would sure feel a heck of a lot better going forward with the plan that affects their block directly if we had their support. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Okay, so anyone in council wish to make any secondary comments or follow up on anything? No? Seeing none.
I do.
Go ahead.
I just, this isn't really an answer to Councillor Thomas, but I have watched the minutes and I have watched the emails that have come in, and I honestly believe that our staff has worked extremely hard to talk and to meet with all of those people and to just have their issues discussed with them, and it's not as if we've ignored them. We certainly have spent time with them all, and it's my understanding that things have been going along okay, and no, they may be not happy with everything, but it's something that is going to happen, Richard, and I just, I feel that we've really worked hard to talk to and listen to their concerns.
Go ahead.
Please don't get me wrong, in no way did I mean to imply that staff is not doing its job or staff hadn't reached out. I've simply had discussions with the folks down there. They're not happy with the way the plan is moving forward. And, that's they've had the input from staff, but they're still, certainly the people I've talked to are unhappy. And, people are going to be unhappy, I get that, I know about not in my backyard syndrome. I don't think this is it. We're talking about people's livelihoods here. We're also talking about the downtown. And one of the first things that we did in the Economic Development Committee was implement a downtown revitalization study to look at ways that we could bring more businesses in to fill the downtown stores that are empty at present. And again, when you have business owners who are saying that they will consider moving out of the downtown if this moves on, and they may not. Everything may be tickety-boo, but I just can't move forward unless we've got something further from those people, unless we've found some way to connect them to this project in a way that they can be happy.
Thank you. Mary, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would hope that those individuals who were not happy with the way the plan is being presented now would take the 30-day period and express those concerns to the right people and make sure that they're heard if they feel they have not been heard.
Okay. Seeing no one else put their hands up, so I'll now call the question. All in favor? And that is carried with one opposed. So that gets us all the way through to, you had that? Thanks for coming. I'll explain later. So we're down to 12D, which is a corporate director of corporate services with regard to climate change preparedness.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff report is asking for council to confirm their commitment to support the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority as a partner in their application for funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There is a program that has been created to offer climate change staff grants, which will fund up to 80% to a maximum of $125,000 over a 2-year period for one new or existing employee who will implement specific municipal initiatives focused on climate change adaptation. Attached to the report is a proposed job description for an employee that would sit at the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. As the report highlights, the scope of work may include documenting and tying together studies impacting stormwater management, demonstrating due diligence to reduce insurance liability for both the city and the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, as well as enhancing in-house expertise for the city and Grey Sauble Conservation Authority as they relate to water and climate change. Applications are due in June 29th, and we're looking for council support as the Grey Sauble Conservation Authority requires a municipal partner in order to apply under this program.
Go to Councillor Gregg.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see this program, and I know as a board member, this is supporting a program that is part of the strategic plan, which is being developed right now, and provides a little bit more comfort and stability to a position for another couple of years to support the organization. There's a lot of discussion about watching the finances out there, and I think the board would be pleased to support this as well. So I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12E.
Thank you, Your Worship. This staff report is requesting direction from council to prepare the necessary bylaws and to enter into lease agreements with the proponent for the solar farms, one of which is located near the compost site, the other is at the RPA rail trail, and the third one is close to the public works yards. The total lease agreement would be for $125,000 on an annual basis, with $35,000 coming from the compost site and $45,000 coming from each of the other additional sites.
Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question for the Director of Public Works. What revenue will we receive for the solar panels, including all 3 locations? Through Your Worship, $125,000 on an annual basis once the sites are commissioned. Great, thank you, and I would move that recommendation.
Other questions? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12F. City Clerk, public notice.
Through you, Your Worship, Heritage Grove, Inc. submitted a request to acquire lands along the south side of 16th Street East Road Allowance, fronting their property in east of the 20th Avenue East Road Allowance. The request was circulated to various city departments. The Planning Division suggested that any transfer should be to the same registered owner as the abutting lands. Engineering Services proposed that the city exchange land with the proponent to maximize the development potential of their property while ensuring that the city retains sufficient road allowance to provide for future development. Engineering Services provided a sketch displaying the land to be exchanged. The total area of land that the city and proponent would each acquire would be approximately equal, so there would be no need for evaluation. This report is initiating the process as required by our disposition of land bylaw. The recommendation listed for council approval is to direct staff to provide notice and afford the public an opportunity to comment on the city's intention to declare surplus and dispose of the subject lands. Direct staff to post notice on the city's website and in the Sun-Times. Direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to declare surplus the subject lands, provided there are no public comments that oppose the declaration submitted prior to or at the public meeting. City Council does not require evaluation for the subject lands and authorizes the method of disposition to be by land exchange.
Thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the recommendation.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. We're down to 12G. Oh, I've got a conflict, so I'll get you to step in. 12G.
12G is a report from the Manager of Contract Services re-lease agreement of the airport hangars. Brianna?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry, thank you, Dennis. Go ahead.
It's fine. The hangars in question have been sold. As a result, we have to terminate the leases with the previous owner and enter into new lease agreements with the new owner. The leases will be for about a period of 18 years and will be for a higher rate than the previous leases.
Councillor Kepke.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Wright, to the Director. Can you tell me if there's any hangars left for sale at the airport?
Through Your Worship, I wish I knew the answer to that question, but I can find out fairly soon, or maybe my boss can help me out with this one.
Mr. Ritchie.
I don't believe there are any, again, we don't own the hangars, we own the land, so any that would be available for sale would be known amongst people that have aircraft. So we really have no interest in the sale of the hangars, it's only the lease of the land.
Thank you. Sorry for the tough question. Should have warned you. Anyways, I'm happy to move the recommendation. You are
Okay, fine. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Do you want to bring him back in?
Thank you. So we're at 12H, elections 2018.
To Your Worship, this is the third 2018 election report and includes items for information and one bylaw that requires direction from council. The help center times have changed slightly from my previous election report. There will be help centers at City Hall, the Legion, the Rec Center, the Mall, and the Bayshore. There will also be help centers at all of the institutions and retirement homes throughout the voting period, and a help center at Georgian College for its students. There will be 2 internet and telephone voting information sessions, one on August 29th at 7 p.m. and the other on September 29th at 10 a.m. The city's election webpage is an excellent source of information for voters, candidates, and third-party advertisers. The rest of my report is dedicated to the Compliance Audit Committee. The Municipal Elections Act requires that all municipalities appoint a Compliance Audit Committee by October 1st, 2018. A qualified elector who believes on reasonable grounds that a candidate or a registered third party has contravened a provision of the Act relating to election campaign finances may apply to the Compliance Audit Committee for a compliance audit of the candidates or third-party advertisers' election campaign finances. New this election, the clerk is responsible to report to the Compliance Audit Committee any contributions on the financial statements submitted by a candidate or third-party advertiser that have appeared to exceed any of the contribution limits. The Grey County Clerks have developed terms of reference for a Grey County Compliance Audit Committee. It is staff's recommendation that Owen Sound participate in this joint Compliance Audit Committee. The Grey County Compliance Audit Committee will be composed of between 3 and 7 members. A selection committee will recommend a maximum of 7 members who will be appointed by each municipal clerk. City Council needs to delegate this authority by bylaw. This is the most efficient way to appoint members and ensure consistency of members across the county. Members of the Grey County Compliance Audit Committee will be paid a retainer of $1,000 split amongst the member municipalities. Any other costs associated with the operation of the Compliance Audit Committee will be shared jointly by the member municipalities. Should a compliance audit be initiated, members of the sitting committee will be paid $150 for meetings under 4 hours and $250 for meetings over 4 hours, plus mileage. The host municipality will be responsible for these costs as well as any audit or legal costs as may be required. The resolution in the report is for council to direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to adopt the terms of reference for the Grey County Compliance Audit Committee and delegate authority to the clerk to appoint the members of the committee.
Thank you. Councilor Kepke?
Thank you, Worship. I'm happy to move that recommendation.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Brian, I was trying to talk your grandmother and family into waiting around till you made that report, but it didn't work. Sorry. 12I, heads and beds.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an annual report to bring forward a bylaw to levy taxes upon certain institutions, specifically Grey Ruth Health Services and Georgian College, typically or historically known as our heads and beds tax. It generates revenue of approximately $80,000 based on the number of students and beds at the hospital. Numbers have not changed materially over 2017. Grey Ruth Health Services is stable, and the Georgian College has seen a slight increase from 630, to 693.
Good, thank you. Councilor Dodd?
Thank you, Worship. Those are always good numbers to hear that Georgian College is growing. Obviously, that's a pretty essential service in our city, so I'd be more than happy to move that recommendation.
All in favor? That's carried. I didn't think there'd be any discussion on taxes.
No report.
Nothing to report? Okay, so we're down to the consent agenda.
Through your worship, on the consent agenda this evening is a report respecting an FCM grant agreement, a flag flying request from St. Dominique Savio, and minutes for receipt from the DIA and Festival of Northern Lights. Business licenses were issued to Grey Gallery at 883 2nd Avenue East, Big Bay General Store Ice Cream, Mobile Food Business, Global Pet Foods at 1177 16th Street East, and Home Occupation for Hargest Renovations at 560 10th Street A West. Lastly, there is correspondence received, which is presented for the information of council. A full listing is available at 13F.
Thank you. You got the sheet?
Yes, sir. Moved by myself that City Council receives item 13A to 13F on the consent agenda dated June 25th, 2018, and further that the recommendation contained in Report 13A be approved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Oops, sorry, Scott.
That's carried. If I can go back to 13C, which is Owen Sound DIA minutes from January 17th, February 28th, April 11th. Anyone? Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Worship. Although I wasn't appointed until February to DIA, I will comment on the January minutes somewhat. There was a presentation by Will McReynolds, KP9 Interactive, which is demonstrated the Explore AR platform. Users can create a profile and drop their own augmented stories for others to find. This allows users to create walking tours of history buffs to place information in AR in real time on-site at real places. The board agreed that this would be a valuable tool for OSAD membership. Owen Sound Chamber of Commerce and the Owen Sound Downtown Improvement Area will be co-hosting a municipal all-candidates meeting for the 28 municipal elections, so we'll look forward to that date. Other than that, I will move on to the February minutes. There was a presentation by BDO on the financial statements. There is an accumulated surplus of $94,477 in the DIA, and this year they did have a positive finish to their net financial asset position, and a $10,920 surplus will be transferred to the beautification reserve. Owen Sound is looking for feedback from OSAD membership regarding the Retail Holiday Act, and how many of the stores would be interested in staying open if an exemption was available. We'll certainly be hearing further on other committees on that topic and further from the DIA as well. DIA Board of Management approved the 2018 budget with a request for a 2% levy increase for the 2018 and that reserve funds be utilized for the remaining shortfall. 2017 AGM was set for March 27th, and hence there were no minutes for March for the DIA. Minutes of April for DIA, Russell Ellis from CTRE Productions, Extreme Winter Sports Event, provided a concept of a freestyle skiing event to be held in the 700 block of 2nd Ave East in January and February 2019. DIA hasn't heard anything further on that, but it seemed like quite a unique opportunity for some activity downtown in the winter. Summer Street Fest will be taking place on Friday, July the 6th, and it will be followed by the Hottest Street Sale on July the 7th. Those listening, make sure you're around that weekend to take in the activities all on 2nd Ave East from 8th to 10th, and probably further, probably goes down to 11th. The retail holiday exemption survey results, the DIA supported the concept of proceeding with the retail holiday exemption. 2018 maintenance agreement was signed between the city and the DIA, and the only changes to this agreement is that the inclusion of plowing of the sidewalks within the downtown core and the pickup and disposal of sharps would be carried out by the city's Works Department. And other than that, Your Worship, that's a summary of the minutes.
Good, thank you. Festival of Northern Lights, March 27th, April 24th. Anything to report?
Just very briefly, Your Worship, the board is actually streamlining its procedures to run their meetings in a more business-like manner under Robert's Rules of Order. May have had some small influence in that. And most of the minutes, though, revolve around the trivia night, which was held recently, and I don't have any results on that yet, as the board hasn't met since trivia night.
Good, thank you. So that covers off the consent agenda. We did vote on it, yes. Number 14, committee minutes with recommendations for approval, starting with minutes of Accessibility Advisory Committee, meeting held June 22nd, 2018. Good. Anything, Peter? Go ahead.
There was one site plan that came forward and was approved and is coming forward to you. That's it.
Okay, so you're moving approval of those minutes?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. 14B, minutes of the City Hall Accommodation Ad Hoc Committee. Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Worship. I won't be as fast as Councillor Lemon. The committee toured the site on the 12th of June, and there was lots going on. The interior is coming together quite nicely. Most of the drywall is at the finishing stage, and some has already been painted. Workers have started the suspended ceiling, and the tiles are installed in the washrooms. The installation of the elevator is well underway, and the installation of the glass upstairs in the two meeting rooms is 2 to 3 weeks away. Kristen Trider advised that she received a revised schedule from CSIRO on June 1st, and it still indicates substantial completion for July 16th. That said, we aren't real confident that date will be met. As a precaution, committee has directed staff to explore the extension of our lease agreement and implement if required. The good news at this point is we continue to stay on budget, and the workmanship of the renovation is well above average. We're definitely getting close.
Good.
And with that, I'll move approval of those minutes.
Any questions? Yep, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Barr. I just have one question. One comment jumped out at me. I'm wondering, the company that is installing the interior glass walls is the same company that would be installing furniture. How was that, the glass walls, was that tendered separately, RFP, at a dollar value that we didn't see? Because we had the RFP for the company installing the furniture, and then I'm just wondering, is the architect part of the scoring on the furniture? Like, how did that work? And
Go ahead, Ms. Coulter.
Through you, Your Worship, the furniture budget was a separate RFP. The interior partitions is the same company, but it was part of the CSIRO construction budget. So it was part and parcel of that. The furniture was separate. The name is escaping me, but it is Italian Interiors that are doing both. So it was part and parcel, those interior partitions, part and parcel of the CSIRO construction budget, I
Two
believe.
separate bids, and they ended up getting both of them.
They would have bid with CSIRO.
Under CSIRO. Anything else?
No.
Okay. You moved approval of those?
I did.
I
did, Your Worship.
So all in favor? That's carried. So I'm at Community Service Committee.
That's me again, Your Worship.
You again?
The municipality of Meaford has notified staff they will no longer continue with the non-resident fee reimbursement program. The committee approved additional usage of the Bayshore Community Center halls for Active Lifestyles Center Grey Bruce. All of the same rules will apply. The city can cancel their booking for a paid booking. That happens about 2 to 3 times a year without dispute. Staff have advised that Active Lifestyle's current usage of the facility accounts for $10,695 in free bookings, and the additional usage will account for another $9,239 in free bookings. It is recommended that the city transfer this amount from the grants budget to the facility booking budget in order to reflect the city's support for seniors. Carly MacArthur, our events facilitator, presented the 2018 Home and Cottage Expo wrap-up, and this really is a good news story. All of the vendor space was sold out in early March. The total number of visitors was 3,137 paid admissions. That number is above the 10-year average. Lowering expenses and seeking new sources of income allowed for net proceeds to be higher in 2018 than any of the previous 3 years. So a big pat on the back for Carly MacArthur and Brent Fisher for taking that event to the next level. Committee approved another facade grant for the old post office at 299 9th Street East. The proposal is to repair damaged stonework in 2 places. This property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and has received facade grants in the past for work on the roof, planters, brick, and masonry work. A second facade grant was approved for Marine Martyr at 217 8th Street West. The proposal includes brick and masonry repair, as well as repair and/or replace 2 windows. The proposal also included the replacement of soffits and fascia. This property is also designated under the Ontario Heritage Act. And finally, Dave Aston from MHBC Planning presented a draft report of the Retail and Commercial Policy Review. The purpose of the review is to assess existing commercial policies and current retail trends. Also, to examine the city's commercial structure and provide recommendations for consideration in the upcoming official plan review. I won't go into detail at this point, as he was seeking more input from the public and will be back to present his final recommendations. The presentation, executive summary, and draft report can be found at www.owensound.ca/RCP. City staff, namely Margaret Potter, will be accepting written comments on the draft until July 6th, 2018 at 4:30 p.m. And with that, Your Worship, I would move approval of those minutes.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Can't believe it's my mic going on so much, but we've been saving this meeting for a long time, so thanks, Mayor Boddy. I have a couple questions. Just one, was there any questions regarding evaluating participation numbers in minor sports after getting that letter at the committee, or no questions asked by anyone?
Through you, Your Worship, we do collect minor sport participation numbers, and as a rule, report on those once a year through committee, so we'll continue to do that.
Okay, thanks. Just wondering, then, the net effect of the senior center grant is 0, correct? We're just moving from one account to another. Okay. Question on the 217 8th Street facade work. This one dates back to at least 2015. Is there any, are we on allowance in terms of letting these go year after year after year? This one seems to keep coming back.
Through Your Worship, there has been a number of grants on this property. The work that's ongoing had, I think, approval, as you mentioned, and I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm going to say back to 15 or 16 with a 1-year extension. So that work that's happening now is under an earlier grant. The work that they're proposing would be under a new grant. So priority is given to these designated properties. So they are separate and distinct projects.
Okay, thanks for that. And last question. I know I've had one person come to me regarding a property just beside the old Grey Granite Curling Club, and he is interested in taking an old commercial space and turning it into an apartment because he can't rent it. It's been years. And I was wondering, the zoning, or this David Aston's work that is being undertaken right now, I was kind of under the impression that it was going to tackle those kind of zoning issues to, if this guy's got a barrier right now in terms of putting somebody into his building, this is what this was going to be. But there seems to be a lot of, we did another study on finding out what stores are needed, and we just did that. We heard from Mr. Thomas tonight with the economic revitalization. So I just wondered, is that type of important issue being considered in this?
Through your worship, I would be happy to discuss a particular address, because my hunch is if it's near the gray granite, it's likely Zone C1 that permits the conversion of, so it permits converted. It may require a small amount of commercial space on the main level facing the street, but the remainder of the building could be converted. So happy to provide information either directly to a property owner to help facilitate that transition. In terms of the commercial policy review, in 2002, we did a commercial needs assessment that really informed the policies of our official plan, particularly with respect to section, we call it 4429, which is the commercial test. So where there's lands in that East City commercial area that are being redesignated for commercial, there's a, excuse me, a test that those businesses and proponents had to go through to demonstrate essentially that the growth and development of commercial in that East City commercial area wouldn't have a negative impact on the downtown. It wasn't premature, it, didn't do certain things. So the update of this commercial policy review isn't really intended to look specifically at what stores do we need. The downtown revitalization study did that. This looks more at commercial trends, and are those policies still relevant to help inform our new official plan?
Okay, thank you.
Good. Everyone else is good? Call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Economic Development, Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. Now we get to have some fun back in probably the one of the most funnest committees that we've got going here. I thought Community Services was, but I don't know, Brian. We had a couple of quick reports. Back in December of 2017, Director of Community Services, my apologies, had presented a Retail Business Holidays Act, which would allow storefronts to be open on statutory holidays. So this had been done in December of 2017, and then we also looked at it again in February of 2018. But what we needed to do, we needed to send it off to the DIA and to the Owen Sound Chamber of Commerce to get some feedback from the business community. So that's what we had done back in February, and we just got those stats back from the survey results. When we got back from the DIA, we had 33 businesses respond back on that survey. 13 of those would consider staying open on stat holidays. 19 of those 33 members said they would like the DIA to apply for the exemption on the Act. If the DIA as a group applies for the exemption, then they can have basically an overall exemption, and the individual businesses that are associated with the DIA would be able to do stat holiday business closures themselves without going through another public meeting process. Whereas if you're just an individual business, say if you were Nickel Insurance and you wanted to stay open on a Monday, which I don't think they get very many employees, you would have that option, but you would have to go through a public meeting process to get it approved. So the DIA acknowledged that if they would like to go to a whole exemption, they would prefer it to be through the DIA as a whole. So what we also decided after that meeting was that council should hold a public meeting to discuss the blanket exemption bylaw, and so we will gather further feedback from the general public, especially those ones who will be working in the retail stores. They're the ones that are going to be working those days, so we'd like to hear the feedback from them as well. So that was moved by Mayor Boddy. We also had a deputation from Jackie Furtner. She was at, she's the owner of Bear Birch, located just in the downtown core. She was at the Ontario Business Improvement Area Association Conference, and she did give a presentation to the DIA, and it was really good, so we brought it to the Economic Development Committee as well, just so that way individuals, a part of the Economic Development Committee, can also see some other features of what economic development could look like. So one of the things that she had discussed in her presentation was a gentleman named Doug Griffiths. He was a keynote speaker. He has a book called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community, but he basically is saying how attitudes can affect your success and you need to encourage organizations to have a united and positive front. The second speaker also went was Roger Brooks. He discussed how downtowns are important. This is what I had touched on previously, that there is a sense of place and community, and are about people and cultural depth. A revitalized downtown is the most important economic development tool for our city, and through his assessments, most of the communities that are successful are making their downtowns the place where you want to hang out. So very similar to what we had just discussed previously about the downtown River Precinct. I should go into my notes over here. Some of the other key points that they had discussed, which I know we have done in the past, or the years of economic development, but which is a positive that we are doing these. We need to solve our parking dilemma. Clearly, that's an issue. We need further public washrooms, which I know Councillor Lemon's a big advocate for. We need to develop gathering places. The one thing I did note that we have done in the previous, we used to do the good first impressions. I think we did with Aurelia back before I was even on council, 2013. I remember sitting on that board and we had the town of Aurelia come through, both the city of Owen Sound, and we did the tour for them as well. And maybe that might be something that we need to look in again, of seeing if we can do what we can get from that first impression again, now that this time has passed and businesses have changed. Other things that help with the downtown core, sidewalk cafes and intimate surroundings, that's something we're working on. Invested heavily in our retail beautification, something the DIA is really aggressive on. So it was a really great presentation by Jackie, so I appreciate her taking time out of her busy schedule. She's got a young child and a husband and a business, so we are appreciative of her taking time to come and present it to us. Next, we got a verbal report from our tourism marketing coordinator about this new exciting event that's going on. Councillor Thomas he's graciously provided his time to give as a historian and author, to lead excursions through the Corkscrew City Tour. So the city has partnered with Beer Bus, which is out of Collingwood, and it seats about, 12 people. And they go through the Roxy Theatre, local breweries, pubs, museums, and another way to kind of bring yourself into that experience of what it would have been like during Prohibition days. Peter, you remember those, don't you?
No.
All right, so guests will hop on the beer bus to meet both the saints and sinners of yesterday. There's brewmasters of today and here on Sound, so I think they'd make a stop at Mudtown Station. You'd make a stop at Killannon. Do you stop at the Seldom House?
Yes.
Seldom House, and then, pardon? Oh, Grey Roots, yes. Okay, they're rushing me. Anyways, yeah, it looks like a really good event. There's 4 dates: June 22nd, which just happened, July 20th, August 17th, and September 14th. It's a 4-hour tour, but it's $100 a person. Anyways, it looks like it's a lot of fun.
Did they go to any of the bootleggers, the Hortons and bootleggers?
I don't think they stopped at your house, Councillor Lemon, so I don't think they got any bootleggers, but...
10:30 to deadline,
okay.
We're at 10 now.
Anyways, Councillor Lemon also ended it by saying that there was a little bit of some more information that might be coming in the future, a report about some potential of some more plaques for the Marine Memorial, and with that, Your Worship, I would move approval of those minutes.
Good. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Just noting we're at 10 o'clock and we've got a 10:30 curfew. Yeah, okay. And we can extend at that point if anybody really wants to. 14E, Minutes of Operations Committee. Councillor Gregg.
Okay, here I go. We began with a public meeting regarding large vehicle parking on city streets. There was a half-dozen people in attendance who provided us with different ideas to consider. After hearing the residents' comments, the committee requested a staff report that addresses the comments and concerns of the public. We had a discussion about the public waste receptacles. Staff have applied stickers on the receptacles that say, "No household garbage, maximum fine $1,000. Committee has recommended that council support bylaw enforcement staff to inform landlords of their duty to provide a garbage storage area for their tenants. Committee discussed the current restaurant lease at the airport. The 3-year lease at the rate of $9,900 a year plus HST expires in September of 2018. The new lease that was verbally agreed to was for 10 years at a rate of $15,000 plus HST. The tenant chose not to sign it. As a result, the city has issued an RFP for a new restaurant operator. Committee noted that the city, in good faith, funded a $140,000 septic system in 2017 for the airport lands to assist the restaurant use at the facility. And with that, your worship, I would move approval of those minutes.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. 14F, minutes from Tom Thompson Art Gallery Advisory Committee.
Thanks, Your Worship. This may or may not be working, we're not entirely sure, so I'll just go ahead anyway. And I'm going to do us all a favor here, and I'm going to get my other business out of the way at the same time as I do these minutes. How's that for efficiency? The real main event that we talked about at the gallery is our continuing the process of community engagement. And the primary discussion was about the Meet and Mingle Campfire, which will be held this Thursday night at the gallery from 7 to 9 p.m. It is a family-friendly event which will feature, among other things, flashlight tours of trailblazers, Tom Thompson, the Group of 7 in Ontario's provincial parks. The lower gallery will be set up like a camp out with a campfire and s'mores and hot chocolate and lemonade. And really the goal of the evening is just to bring in some people who maybe haven't been to the gallery before. It's a great chance to see the best of our collection of Tom and the Group of 7. And there'll also be a sneak peek at the 100 Squares exhibit. 100 Squares is a selection of miniature artworks that are for sale. And with that, I would move we pass these minutes.
Good. Questions? None. All in favor? Carried. Yep, there was a question. Go ahead.
Not particularly on that one, but I think the Accessibility Advisory Committee minutes, there was something in there that certainly is worth mentioning, and it's the Council on Aging presentation. Councillor Dodd and myself were at the Active Lifestyle Senior Centre where a presentation was made to that group on the Council on Aging and making our community more age-friendly. I note in the minutes of that meeting, the intent of the Council on Aging is to be an advisory committee to municipal councils, providing a two-way communication avenue between older adult residents and the municipal council. One model would be to have a designated seat on the Accessibility Advisory Committee table that could be an age-friendly hat to help the committee see things through an age-friendly lens. Alternatively, if that is not a possibility, then at least create an awareness for this committee and the council that the Council on Aging exists. At that meeting, Councillor Lemon noted that he believes this committee would be the most appropriate to coordinate with the Council on Aging, since many of the things that are done for accessibility are also beneficial to seniors. And I just wanted that not to go unnoticed, that this, there's been a big step taken in a lot of municipalities on Council on Aging, and they have partnered with a municipal committee. So I don't know if Councillor Lemon can highlight anything on that, or let us know if this is now going to be a further report at each accessibility committee or not.
I believe it's going to develop that way. There has to be a couple of things done. If we appoint someone who's not disabled to that committee, we've got to make sure that it doesn't upset our balance.
Perhaps age-friendly falls into that category.
Technically, no. I mean, if someone has a disability, it would be fine, but we'll find a way to do it.
But even if they can report through that committee, that
Yes,
would certainly be helpful.
That's not an issue at all.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. So that gets us down to 15 matters postponed. There are no postponed matters. Motions for which notice was previously given. None. Discussion of additional business, starting with Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to give you a brief update, we did have our Young Professionals Network event out at Calvin Ridge when we were on our route out there at 5:30. it was up to 145 people who had registered out of 150. I would say that when we got there, I think we had maybe between 110 and 120 overall throughout the entire evening. So those SurveyMonkey emails will be going out shortly, and I think those again will be really interesting to hear that feedback. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, everybody. We've seen now for a month a protest on 2nd Avenue, and actually I had a great conversation a couple weeks ago with a lovely lady who many of you would know. She made a deputation in an operations committee about transit a year ago, and she spoke so glowingly of the work of county personnel, Anne Marie Shaw and Barb Fetty, and the program that is in place at the county, how much it assists people who are in need, and she knows firsthand the value because she's received that in her past, and she's so thankful for it. It bothers her to have seen the way that people have behaved in this situation, and it seems to be ongoing. And from other input that I've taken from the public, they're wondering why this is being allowed to go on and on and on. And I'm just wondering, we know as councillors that it's a sensitive issue, it's difficult, it's been terribly draining and a horrible consumption of resources for staff time. I'm wondering, is there anything in our bylaws that we can tighten up that's being manipulated in this scenario, in this case here? Because frankly, a lot of people in the community just see it as unacceptable, and if it was in most other places downtown, it just would not be allowed to stand. So I'm just wondering, have we got any holes here that we need to examine in the future?
Mr. Ritchie?
Through you, Worship, certainly the councillor is correct. Staff time, bylaw staff, and police services, as well as our friends in Works, have certainly been addressing this issue almost daily. We continue to meet, we continue to work towards compliance of all city bylaws. I can only comment on that today, and I really can't say any more at this time. Are there weaknesses in our bylaws? No more than there are in any other municipality in Ontario, but we continue and we will continue to seek compliance with our city bylaws.
Thank you.
Good. Councillor Kepke, you had 2 matters.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, thank you for letting me take your place at the 4th Annual Bruce Gray Music Hall of Fame induction celebrations. This really brought back memories for me, being an age-friendly individual. The nominees, and congratulations to each of them, is Alan Alberta Weatherall, and the Four Folk. I remember dancing to them at the Legion many, many times. Dave Chittick, who also had a barn dance group. Bert Hood was recognized for his creation of the Teen Tones way back when. And Al Widmeyer, who played the dobro for Stompin' Tom, was also recognized. He's a Hanover fellow. Each of them were there, and each of them showed us some of their talents. Still very, very good, and I had a great time at this event. My second item is Harrison Park, and my gosh, doesn't it look great. I just want to thank who's ever been doing the work, and please send our thanks to those who did do the work, but I've been getting lots of comments on how really good it looks, and I'm so pleased to see that drainage path going through there in the problem area, and as well to see the progress on the pool. So please pass those on to staff and everyone working on that.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Wright.
Well, thank you very much. I had the pleasure to represent the mayor at the Grave Simcoe Foresters Cadet graduation, and I just want to say it was a very impressive ceremony. The young people were very impressive themselves, and I just think that congratulations to the young men and women who won awards and graduated from that program. It's a very worthwhile program for ages 12 to 18, and it was enjoyable. Thank you for the opportunity.
So a couple of quick things I went through. I went to Georgian College Level 1 Cook graduation the other day. So it's set up by the two area school boards with Georgian College for trades. Kids that are in high school could go in and get their Level 1 training already. I was invited by I guess a friend, Christian Cayley, who's a former air cadet. That's how I know him, and he's really a polite, good young guy. About 30 kids, and it's a great way for them to get pardon the pun, I'm using it again, a taste of the program at Georgian College and start to get a taste for trades. It's pretty clear that we need trades in our area, and young people to go into trades. Some of them will not go on with cooking, they'll go into different trades in there, and they plan to branch out. Saturday, attended Georgian Bay Amateur Radio Club Field Day. They do this annually. If we ever had a disaster in town, they would be the ones we would rely on. While I was there, Larry Miller got talking to, I'm going to stick for a name, somebody that just moved from here and he's now living in Prince Edward Island, Bob Berry. So they're having this conversation back and forth, and all of a sudden they figure out who each other are. It was really cool. Also with them was Helping Hands Craft Club, or Bag Ladies. They take plastic bags, milk bags, and strip them and tie them together and weave them or crochet them into big blankets that they send off around the world, and it's pretty cool. I'm hoping that they'll come and do a presentation to us at some night, just so people hear what they're doing, and we'll start saving plastic bags for them. Attended Ride, Don't Hide, CMHC, mental health. It's a fun ride. Everyone had fun, raised some money, brings awareness to a cause, raised $50,000 by approximately 200 riders, and for about the first time in 30 years I got on a racing bike and participated. It was fun until Monday morning. We toured the Odawa building, and it looks great. A really nice job that they've done with it, and anybody would want to live there. Noticed on Facebook the other day that we owe a congratulations to Councillor Richard Thomas, who recently, maybe it was on Saturday, was it awarded the Colonel Chan Award? I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. Carnarvon, so, okay, that does make sense. At the 30th AGM of the Ontario Historical Society for contributing to many years of service to the Ontario heritage community in Owen Sound and Grey County as an author, researcher, videographer, and exhibit writer. So congratulations on that recognition. That's pretty cool. I want to touch, I didn't have it written in, but I want to touch on Jim McManaman. We around the table know what the commitment is, but I'm not sure everybody out there does. He was working today as a fireman in Toronto. He's on a 24-hour shift and got someone to come in and cover for him, but at 4:30 this afternoon a fire broke out. His crew was there. He's a captain. Events happened. He had to race to get out of there, come home, got here late, and is going back to work right now because he has major reports to write on it. Wanted to be here for that part of our meeting tonight, and that is one heck of a commitment that we all know about it, that it should be recognized how special that is. So he'll be back there by, I don't know, he'll probably be back there by now, I'm exaggerating. Another hour, an hour and a half, and then it's right downtown Toronto, and then, until 7 in the morning, and if he's writing reports, maybe beyond that, so that's a commitment to come up and attend our meetings. Wishing everybody a happy Canada Day, also extending a happy Canada Day on behalf of MP Larry Miller, that asked us to do that to all the citizens of Owen Sound. We'll see you on Canada Day at Kelso. We'll see you downtown on July 6th and 7th at the Hottest Yard Sale, etc. And we'll see you at Harborfest on July 14th. So lots of things coming up in Owen Sound. So that's my notes. Motions. Staff. Sorry, Pam, I did it to you again.
I think you covered it, Your Worship. You may have noticed in Saturday's paper the flyer for Canada Day featuring Matt Epp. There's lots of super things for kids and families all day, incredible animals that you can get inside and put a puzzle together with essentially their insides. Pretty cool. So great day. Carly is still looking for a few volunteers. So if you have students that are willing to volunteer for Canada Day that need volunteer hours, or you're interested, contact Brent or Carly in our Community Services Department.
Good, thank you. Councillor Dodd, you're reminding me of something that I've...
Sorry, it just came to my mind now. I know we did this in the last meeting as well, of offering our congratulations to Ryan Brown for giving him congratulations for running the first Pride Parade. But I think since then, we should also give him congratulations that he was invited to Parliament Hill to raise the flag in Ottawa. So once again, congratulations to him.
Being recognized, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Moved by myself that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
All in favor? That is carried. Number 19.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kepke, that the action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
And all in favor? It is carried. Notices of motion. You have a notice of motion?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I'll be bringing forward a motion next council to reverse our decision on making lot number 9 surplus.
Okay,
Thank you.
good, thank you. 21 bylaws.
Moved by myself, second.
Hold on, got to get them presented first.
To your worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw, a bylaw to amend the flag flying, proclamations, and public awareness campaigns policy, a bylaw to amend the dog bylaw to increase the number of dogs per household limit, a bylaw to execute a lease agreement with 1813203 Ontario Incorporated respecting airport hangars E3, E4, E5, and E6 for Meads, a bylaw to execute an agreement with FCM for the Municipal Asset Management Program funding, and lastly, a bylaw to authorize the levying of a tax upon certain institutions.
And just before you go, I just remind you that 21D, which is bylaw 2018-095, I had a pecuniary interest, so I'm not participating in that, but go ahead.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Thomas, that bylaw numbers 2018, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97 be passed and enacted.
Good, and all in favor? That is carried. So that completes, go ahead.
I just wanted to express my opposition to bylaw 2018-094, which is the number of dogs per household.
Okay. So that's in the record. So with that, it is 10:20 already, so we've made it under our deadline, and that completes our business. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.